Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I am the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1336 of the War News stream. And today we have very big news. Russia has been struck today by a massive long-range Ukrainian attack using multiple different weapons. We've also heard that Putin rejected a U.S. peace deal as talks completely collapsed yet again. And also, Lithuania was invaded by foreign balloons yet again near Vilnius Airport. And we have all that and more, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 48 hours of news from around the world, as we have been able to hear significant developments from around the entirety of the globe once again, with major developments happening over the course of the day, not only in diplomacy, but on the battlefields in between the Ukraine and the Russian Federation. We have been able to hear of significant attacks conducted by the armed forces of Ukraine within the territory of the Russian Federation, some of these strikes spanning nearly 800 miles into the country. These attacks have caused irreparable damage not only to the Russian energy infrastructure system within the short period of the next several months during this winter, but also to the Russian refinery systems that once again are at the actual precipice of near collapse. In the meantime, the Russian Federation has pulled a swift one on the United States of America. After a phone call was initiated by the President of the Russian Federation to the President of the United States several days ago, it has now become clear today, between a meeting of Horseface and the Secretary of State, that the Russian Federation has no intention on actually seeking an amenable peace inside of Ukraine. And Horseface already made it incredibly clear that the Russian Federation is simply having the meeting for the following. Either the United States will absolutely accept every term that the Russian Federation lays out without any further question and impose those demands onto the state of Ukraine. Otherwise, the state of Ukraine and the greater Western world will face unparalleled and untold destruction at the hands of the Russian Federation's armed forces and nuclear arsenal. In response, the United States of America has now decided to start backing off of this upcoming peace talk, considering that it is not a peace talk, it is a straight talk of surrender. In the meantime, the state of Ukraine has made it wildly clear that they are open to the continued concept of being given Tomahawk cruise missiles to finally deliver a deadly blow to the Russian Federation and to force them to seriously consider peace or otherwise face their absolute destruction. Instead of it being a fantasy like the Russians claim, the Ukrainians will make it a reality for the Russian Federation in due time. The Russian Federation has also seen a rapid drop in their stock market over the course of the day, while at the same time we have been able to hear that another airspace violation has been conducted from the airspace of Belarus, with multiple balloons flying over the airspace into Lithuania and causing airspace shutdowns throughout the course of the day. Not only that, drones were also detected around the area of the Balearic Islands off of the east coast of Spain, once again causing a great deal of question and controversy about the ongoing drone crisis. The Czechs are actually offering the Ukrainians a satellite in the meantime to help them with their own intelligence gathering and execution of battle orders based off of intelligence that they're provided from the satellite. And we've also been able to hear that 2 oil processing and natural gas facilities have exploded within Hungary and Romania just several hours ago. Inside of the Middle East, the Israelis appear to be continuing their actions against the Hezbollah forces within southern Lebanon, with some U.S. analysts now saying that it appears unclear whether or not the Lebanese government will actually be able to dismantle and stop Hezbollah from being an existent terrorist force within the country. We have also heard that British peacekeepers will be arriving in the Gaza Strip, while more purges are happening within the Central Military Committee of the People's Republic of China, as the ongoing schism between the Chinese Communist Party and the People's Liberation Army continues to grow as an ongoing rift within the communist system. At the same time, North Korea has fired an intercontinental ballistic missile in a test firing into the area of the East China Sea, and we've also been able to hear of continued U.S. military buildups around the area of Venezuela. Suffice it to say, we have an absolutely massive amount of news to cover once again tonight, and we will be making sure to cover the entirety of the major news events that have transpired over the past 48 hours. We are still working on trying to get a larger statement from the Secretary of State at the moment, and we'll be trying to get that eventually on the road, or just, axed because it will never get anywhere, here in the near future. But nevertheless, we will be making sure in the meantime to get y'all through all of the major news and developments that we have gotten through the day, starting with our largest stories first, and then working down in relevance to the smaller stories throughout the course of the night. And so, moving us into our largest and most significant story of the day, we have been able to hear that the Russian Federation has absolutely deceived and lied to the President of the United States once again, and unfortunately, the President of the United States once again fell for the bait. We have been able to hear that a meeting was held between Sergei Lavrov and the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, in the pretense of the talks that were supposed to happen in Hungary here in the near future. This meeting was meant to lay the groundwork for another President of Russia, President of U.S. summit, according to a White House source. No official reason was given, but according to CNN, the two sides sharply disagreed on how the war could end. After a recent phone call between Lavrov and Rubio, Washington concluded that Moscow hadn't moved away from its unrealistic demands. We have been able to hear further information from the Russian side over the course of the day about what these unrealistic demands really look like. First off, we were able to hear from a direct statement by the Rat, aka the spokesperson of the Kremlin. Russia's negotiating line regarding stopping troops in existing positions remains unchanged, once again showing that by the spokesperson of the Kremlin's words over the course of the day, they are once again not considering any sort of cessation of hostilities or any sort of concessions towards the West. We have also been able to hear that they have completely rejected the concept of freezing the fighting on the current front line, per sources speaking to the Washington Post that were privy to the conversations that were had between Putin and Lavrov, more so Marco Rubio and Lavrov within the Russian Federation, and we were able to hear that the Russian Federation is largely insisting, according to Reuters, on an unconditional surrender, largely by the West and the armed forces of Ukraine as a whole, as Russia privately sent the U.S. a non-paper restating old peace terms. Moscow wants full control of the Ukrainian Donbass region and no NATO troops in Ukraine. The proposal has clashed with the current president's proposition to freeze the front lines where they're at, and whoever owns what, that is where the borders will begin to be formed. We have also heard additional information that the Russian Federation, as a result of their clear in action today and actually resulting in any sort of a meaningful peace, has once again seen another major stock market crash over the course of the day. Most stocks...
Jeez, man. Honestly, look at that, though. I mean, it is red across the board right there. And those are big losses, too. It's like 5%, 7%. Gazprom had a bad day. Honestly, all that rally that we saw after there was a big announcement that there was going to be a meeting between the U.S. president and Vladimir Putin, the stock market in Russia rallied. But this right here, I think, wiped out pretty much all the gains that they got from that announcement. So I think it's even further red than it was than when it began, honestly. It looks worse.
Actually, let's take a look at the stock rally that happened on the first week of our reporting here, and looking at them side by side, it actually does appear that most gains, well, at least half of the gains that they made prior, have already disappeared just from today. Looking at SPER under the banking sector, they rallied 5% and have now dropped about half that over the course of the day. Gazprom, within the natural gas sector, has actually dropped 4.6% within one day, when it rallied 6.6% when the meeting was originally spoken of that was supposed to happen in Hungary. So it actually does appear, getting a side-by-side here, most of these stocks have actually started to drop at least half or more than half of the rally that they had, but still have been able to get a slight recovery from the damage that was being inflicted from the complete cutoff of any sort of economic relations or any sort of positive outlook from the conflict. So generally, while we're seeing that there is some damage in the stocks so far, and these do appear to be larger bits of damage, it's almost nearly resetting it to what it was before this goose chase started several days ago, but not wiping it out entirely, at least for some of these economic concerns that we're looking at here. Still, it is a major loss, and at least starting to reset the economic stage that the Russian Federation is currently playing on at the moment. And to add an additional bit of info for all of y'all on the current situation, according to the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, has stated the following: Russia will not agree to a ceasefire until the root cause of the conflict in Ukraine is resolved, meaning the existence of the state of Ukraine in its current form. Many of y'all will know that the root cause, according to the Russian Federation in their current diplomatic dialogues with the outside world, is the following. The Ukrainian state is an illegitimate state run by an illegitimate government. It does not exist, and that a large part of the state of Ukraine should exist entirely within the Russian Federation, including Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhzhia, Kherson, and Crimea. The entirety of those oblasts and the Ukrainian government as it currently exists must be dissolved, and new elections must be conducted under Russian oversight for the larger part. Pretty much meaning that the Russian Federation wants to claim well over a quarter of the country's territory, and not only that, largely start to conduct some sort of an action to create Ukraine as a puppet state that will start to become very similar in its operational abilities to that of the Republic of Belarus, which largely already is an unofficial part of the Russian Federation by all operational and administrative standards. For that reason, it does appear that peace is once again as elusive as it was several days ago when Putin first made the call. It also is letting us all know wildly clear once again that the Russian Federation is playing the United States and taking advantage of good intentions that exist within the United States of America. We have to understand, folks, that the United States of America, in this current position in the world right now, is, along with our entire Western sphere, all of our allies in Europe, in North America, Central America, East Asia, and so on, are on the absolute precipice of a new age. One where the United States and our allies will continue to stand as the largest and most dominant power on the face of the planet, or one where we will slowly start to sell off our assets and our allies for the trade of security, or some sort of a semblance of a peace, but at what price? We cannot continue to negotiate with the Russian Federation, the People's Republic of China, the Islamic Republic of Iran, or any enemies of the Republic or our Western sphere as a whole, and continue to believe that these countries have any of our best intentions at mind. These nations, much like Russia has proven today, clearly want to put the United States in the dirt and will conduct any actions all the way to the highest echelons of their leadership to continue to put the West at a severe disadvantage and to continue to give them a fighting chance to put us in the dirt instead of us making sure that they stay in the dirt and that our sphere of influence and that our republic continues to survive. This is something that has to become wildly clear, not only to U.S. leadership, but the leadership of our sphere around the world, that we are at the breaking point. We are either going to stand for what we are and what we continue to fight for, or we will have nothing left to fight for come several decades from this point. What will be left of this Western sphere if we continue to let our enemies play games with us openly and that we do not respond to them with any just recourse? What is there going to be here in the future that the United States will be able to stand tall and say that we are proud of? A large military? We won't even have the allies or the sphere of influence necessary for a large military. A large economy, the largest one in the world? The Russian Federation and the Chinese have made it clear they are working at every step possible to put us at a disadvantage. With the rare mineral trade war that just started recently and the Russian Federation continuing to try and take over large parts of Eastern Europe, they are openly trying to destabilize the sort of economic system that our allies and the United States have grown wildly prosperous over. What will we have in the future to even say that there is anything worth fighting for? At least right now, we can say that there is something that we can stand and fight for. If we continue to let the Russians get by with getting one over on us every single week like this, we will have nothing left to fight for here in the Western world, either our allies or the United States itself. And that has actually moved us into something that is rather important. The Ukrainians are once again saying that they are once again wanting to see the provision of Tomahawk cruise missiles to the state of Ukraine. It's become wildly clear that the Russian Federation is incredibly concerned about this sort of a development, at least with the Russian Federation, and that they want to see that a peace is actually forced at this moment on the Russian Federation, whether they want it to happen or not. And many people have started to talk about whether or not the United States should finally press the trigger, at least on this moment, and provide the state of Ukraine with the well-needed Tomahawk cruise missiles that will bring the Russians to heel. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so today we heard pretty much what we already knew. Russia rejected any ceasefire with Ukraine. They're not willing to accept a single, even a limited ceasefire. Russia is rejecting that entirely. So clearly, Russia wants to keep the war going, and the U.S. was saying that Russia really wanted to stop the war, but I guess they were proven wrong today. And also, as a result of that, the U.S. officials canceled the meeting with Putin, and it has been called off indefinitely. So what happens now? And 54% said Ukraine gets Tomahawks now, while 23% said Ukraine does not get Tomahawks, and only 14% said they will get them very, very soon. So I would say that there's still some hesitancy about the Tomahawks, because the whole reason that the U.S. president was willing to actually put that off and put a pause on it was because I don't personally believe, in my opinion, that he really wanted to send them in the first place, but he was going to do it if Putin didn't call him up and also basically beg that they weren't sent. So Putin effectively bought himself time when he called the U.S. president. He did that whole charade with diplomacy, and it was not a real diplomatic reach. It was not that whatsoever. It was simply stalling to buy more time, which is the typical Putin playbook at this point. So we were all expecting that here on the channel, and everybody in the chat was expecting that, and it played out just like we thought. So I'm going to say, I think that Ukraine might get Tomahawks soon. It's not going to be immediate. Like, I think you can pretty much count on that. Tomahawks are not going to be going to Ukraine immediately. I think the president will have to see how this plays out over the next 2 weeks before he sends any Tomahawks. I'm with the 14%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that it's a really tough one to call, and I would say that they're probably going to get them soon. I'd also have to be with the 14%. But if I was to speak on what should be happening at this moment, I would be with the 55%. The Ukrainians should get the Tomahawks right now. We have said this for months. We've actually said this for years. The Russian Federation is not willing to seek a peace on amenable terms with the Western sphere. That is a baseline fact. It is not an opinion. It is not some form of propaganda. It's become openly clear, especially over this current administration, that there is no path forward with the Russian Federation in meaningful negotiations, where they give some and we give some. They won't even do that. They have once again shown that they are operating in bad faith entirely. And if people even thought that Putin was somehow removed from this bad faith acting up till today, it's become clear that he is the one that is orchestrating the entire deal, because he's the one who called up the President of the United States to get this meeting, which completely suspended the Tomahawks, rallied the Russian stock market, and gave them a second wind, at least in this present day. This goes all the way to the top in the Russian Federation, and every single person in the Russian government is being disseminated their orders from Putin to make it very clear to continue to disorient the West as much as they can, to take advantage wherever they can of goodwill, and to use in bad faith that goodwill by the West to continue to give them a slight advantage in this war. Because of that, we should start to realize that the Russians are not one to be negotiated negotiate with off a position of compromising and good faith. We will negotiate with them from a position of strength from this point forward if we had any sense. We will provide the state of Ukraine with the Tomahawk cruise missiles that they need to rain hell on any strategic target in the Russian Federation that the Ukrainians deem necessary to hit and destroy. Once we start to destroy the Russian refineries entirely, with hardly any of them operational in the country, the Russians will have no chance of an economic survival to continue to see through the war to a victory. They will not even be able to pay the army at that point to keep fighting on the field if they even had any equipment or fuel to fight with at that point. They will be forced to get to the negotiating table, or they will be forced to start losing pretty quickly, and I mean damn well quickly at that point. I would say that I would definitely be with the 54% in practice that we should be sending Tomahawks immediately after this bad faith attempt has been conducted today by the Russians. But the reality of it is, folks, is that unfortunately, the United States of America, at least at the moment, seems to be a little bit slow to adapt to the actual diplomatic scene in which we find ourselves in this current day and age. So I'd actually have to agree with Enforcer Matt. It's most likely going to happen soon, but not right now.
Also, by the way, one thing y'all might have noticed today, if you watched a short war video, Ukraine launched a very unprecedented attack, and we'll get to that in just a minute in the stream, but they launched a very unusual attack midday, in the middle of the day, which they typically do not do, and they used Western-made long-range weapons like the Storm Shadow and other things like that, which are typically reserved for the most part, and also they have to get approval from the West and also from the U.S. to be able to use most of those weapons. So you notice that right after the meeting was called off with Putin and the U.S. president, all of a sudden you saw a major attack by Ukraine on Russian targets in the mainland using those weapons. So, in my personal opinion, I think that they were doing that on purpose because the USA gave them permission to do it as a way to get even for Putin playing the US once again. I think that was it, honestly, but we'll get in that in just a minute. But what do you think, Enforcer? Was it likely at the US's behest they did that, or was it on their own?
I would have to say it may have been on their own, but they may have been waiting for a more diplomatically opportune window to conduct the attack that we saw today, because it would be really quick, because I do have to say, folks, we'll get to Washington here in a second and speak about what they've been saying today, but I would have to say it's highly likely that this was done on their own. Although they weren't looking for U.S. approval, they wanted to make sure that it was clear that there was no path forward for any sort of diplomatic negotiations and then conduct the attack, so it was done at a good timing, more so than that of U.S. approval. Because a lot of the targets that were hit today seem to be more so run-of-the-mill, at least in a sense, for what we've seen over the prior months, but it was a very large attack, to say the least, about this one that we did see. So moving us on into that, considering that that's a huge part of the news, we have been able to hear that the Ukrainian armed forces have conducted a significant drone and missile attack into the Russian Federation over the course of the day, and this one was a wildly massive and dangerous attack for the Russian Federation. We were able to hear that the Russians at least claim that every single type of missile that could have ever been fired was fired into Russia, including Flamingos, Storm Shadows, and Scalps, the Neptune anti-ship missile now converted for a ground attack, and the Peklo. And along with HIMARS missiles, by the way, we do not know if any of those were actually used. One thing we can say, though, is that there was one missile that was used over Crimea. We have not been able to confirm what target it did hit, but this was the clip of the Ukrainian missiles that did fly over Crimea earlier today, confirming that at least to some small extent there were missiles involved in these attacks. There goes one of them.
Booming.
And here comes another. And if we get a close-up look at that, let me see if we can. See, right there. I unfortunately cannot really tell y'all what type of missile that is. It actually looks a lot like a Caliber.
I can tell you, I believe I identified this missile earlier in the video. My best educated guess on this is that is a Ukrainian Bars cruise missile. It's like a drone missile hybrid. It's similar to a Peklo, but slightly different, has a smaller payload on it, but I believe it is a Ukrainian Bars missile. That's a newer produced missile that they're producing in mass. You can pull it up, by the way, and see if it matches up in your opinion, but that's my best educated guess.
And what's it called? The Mars missile?
The Bars missile.
The bars missile. So this thing's spitting bars.
Basically, yeah.
let's take a look at this bars missile. It's actually somewhat close. There's a plausible chance that this could be it. Let me show you all the Bars drone missile. We actually covered this in the news a while ago, and unfortunately I forgot about it. But this one does look close. One, it does have a jet engine, a smaller one, so it would make that distinct sound. And secondly, it does have larger four wings with smaller rear stabilizers or vertical stabilizers near to the rear of the missile. And if we look at this one, that actually lines up pretty similarly. So this may actually be a Bars missile that was being used. They're not incredibly large, but they are quite effective, especially at the speeds at which they're able to reach, which is around approximately 800 kilometers an hour. And you can tell they're fairly fast.
Also, by the way, I see people saying that maybe this is a Tomahawk missile. This is definitely not a Tomahawk. Like, I can tell you that if you pull up a picture of a Tomahawk and show the audience, it doesn't have the same profile. The little winglets that are coming out of this missile right here it's more comparable with a Bars Ukrainian missile. The Tomahawk does not have wide wings like that, and also they're at a totally different point. They're at the midsection of the missile instead of the very front of it.
As you can see right here with this Royal Navy Tomahawk, the body of the missile is far wider. Two, the wings are also a large amount thicker. I would say about maybe 50% thicker. And also, the vertical stabilizers near to the rear of the missile are also set up in a different configuration and also visibly stubbier. For that reason, this would not classify as a Tomahawk cruise missile that we saw in that video. It most likely would be the Bars missile that Matthew had identified earlier in the day. But moving on out of that clip and on into the Russian Federation itself, where we were able to confirm damage, there was a lot of it. Around 36 hours ago, the Orenburg facility was hit, and it did take a decent amount of damage. This is the Orenburg processing plant, which appears to have been involved in some sort of a small firestorm. And I say small as in that's
a damn big one too.
yeah, it's a pretty damn big one. And we also got another clip of this fire as well, right here to show y'all. Hopefully this one loads. And it's taking a minute, folks. There we are. So here's the clip. Now there's the fire right there. It does appear that the Orenburg processing plant was hit by a Ukrainian attack, which means that that attack had to have spanned an area of approximately about 850 miles to be able to hit the target. Meanwhile, at Novokubashevsk, which is just to the west of Samara, we also were able to confirm damage at this refinery as well from prior attacks. According to Astra, the attack by 5 drones on the Novokubashevsk oil refinery damaged at least one of the main units at the plant, a tank farm, and a substation. One of the drones crashed into an AVT-11 crude distillation unit, causing a fire. This refinery is once again taking major damage, much like it has at several points in the war, and will most likely be down for maintenance and repairs for the next several months. We've also been able to confirm that the Russian Federation has been dealing with a bit of a bigger issue, at least close to the border regions. We have seen that they have started to lose some electrical infrastructure, to say the least. We were able to confirm that one Ukrainian drone did hit an electrical substation near to the city of Bryansk, causing limited blackouts within a limited area of the city. We also were able to confirm that a chemical plant was also hit overnight by the Ukrainian drone attacks so far. Picture provided here of the fire, once again confirming that the chemical plant was hit, and we've also been able to hear from some Russian military bloggers, including the Severny Canal, or the Severny channel. Today, if not a disaster, then very close to it, at one factory in the Bryansk region, the area of responsibility of GV North, subscribers report that something very unpleasant is happening right now at the Bryansk chemical plant in Seltso. Once again confirming the chemical plant was hit, and that picture evidence does confirm the ongoing fire at the facility. In Smolensk, the biggest target that was hit of the day was confirmed. The Smolensk thermal power plant, or the Smolensk TEC. The Smolensk TEC is a fairly larger thermal power plant within the Russian Federation, which is capable of providing electricity to a larger area of the Smolensk Oblast. This is starting to confirm that not only are the Ukrainians going after energy infrastructure in the form of crude oil and refined fuel tank farms and also oil refineries, but they are now going directly after substations and power plants of the Russian Federation as well, which help the Russian war industry to keep running due to the electricity that they provide, and also continue to keep the Russian Federation's population in a fairly cushy and comfortable sort of a condition throughout the winter months. It appears that the same sort of attacks that the Russian Federation have been doing unanswered against Ukraine for years, attacking their energy infrastructure, is now being returned in kind by the Ukrainians 3.5 years in.
Also, by the way, was this the target right here? I think, no, actually, I'm mistaken. I was about to say it wasn't this hit with storm shadows, but no, that was actually that was a chemical plant actually that was hit with those.
Yeah, that was the one down in Bryansk that was actually hit by the storm shadows, at least from what we are hearing at the moment. We also have been able to confirm all the way up, and this one's another big one, folks, at the St. Petersburg Pskov main line, which goes from the city of St. Petersburg down to Pskov, and I actually can show you all that one here really quickly. It is the railroad main line that passes through. Let's see here. It is in this area. I'm trying to find it really quickly. Ah, here it is, right here. This is a part of the St. Petersburg-Pskov main line, which travels all the way through this northern area of Russia down to the city of Pskov, which is a fairly major city, at least for the Russian Federation within this northern region. We were able to confirm that some form of an explosion, a major explosion, has occurred somewhere on the Pskov-St. Petersburg Railway, which is used for the Russian Army's military logistics, specifically within the Leningrad military district. According to Ukrainian media sources and the HRU, the tracks were damaged and the freight train caught fire partially. Railway traffic has been halted along the entirety of the main line, which will affect the supply of Russian troops. We do understand that the Leningrad military district does provide rotational units inside of Ukraine from a part of its command into the southern and Moscow military districts to be able to help with the continued fighting of the war in Ukraine. This main line is one of the critical arteries heading out of St. Petersburg and towards the Moscow and southern military districts, which are able to provide a key amount of personnel and equipment to the Russian Federation and their continued efforts. We were able to see, just to add a little bit of additional proof to show you how important the railways are, that the Russians were moving in, suffice it to say, older equipment, that's putting it mildly, to help with the continued war effort inside of Ukraine. And we'll be showing y'all that, right? Oh, by the way, also, look at the Russian soldiers who are riding in top-class passenger accommodations on their way to the front. That's actually Russian soldiers. And you all don't know this. This is a fun little fact, a little tidbit about Russian railroads and military logistics. When they transport soldiers around in all Soviet countries and post-Soviet republics, this is a historical fact throughout literally the entirety of the Cold War and the modern day. When they move all of the tankers and crew members around of a military unit, they don't give them any passenger train cars to sit in. They actually just get cattle cars, at least that's what they did during the Second World War and the early Cold War, or they just get normal railroad box cars and everyone just piles into them. There's literally nowhere to sit, and most of the time they're packed so thick that the only position that you can stay in that rail car is standing only. Very few people actually get to sit. There's that little room, and these cars are crammed that thick. So just to give you all a little bit of an idea of how, I guess you could say, ghetto the Russian army is, they've got the entire brigade riding in boxcars like they're a bunch of hobos here in the United States in the Great Depression. But there they go, and here comes their crap. These are the oldest T-72As I have ever seen anywhere. Most of them are actually rusting, like no joke.
Are you sure those aren't actually hobos, by the way? Like, are you sure they're soldiers?
Oh, no, these are actual soldiers. Like, this is a well-documented thing that the Russians do.
I mean, they could be hobos. I mean, they could be hobo soldiers because I think they're taking up the homeless folks inside of Russia and also throwing them into the military, or at least that's the last report I heard. They're grabbing anybody they can, even out of prisons. So it could be hobos, criminals, pretty much anybody. Honestly, this is probably standard affair.
Man, this is actually pretty standard. Like, the reason why we know that this is a really common thing that's done is, one, a lot of Soviet troops talk about how they were deployed to Afghanistan by riding in boxcars through the whole Soviet Union to get to the border with Afghanistan. And two, there was also a major train derailment that happened in 1957, if I'm not mistaken, in East Germany that actually involved a large amount of East German troops, considering that they were modeled almost identically after the Soviet Union's army, that got involved in a train accident because one of the tank barrels on one of these tanks became unlatched and the turret actually rotated to where the barrel was sticking out over the adjacent mainline track heading in the opposite direction. So, yada, yada, yada. Another train comes down the other track, rams right into the turret of that tank, and it leads to a major derailment, which kills, I think it was something like 130 of the East German troops that were inside the boxcars on the other train, and ended up, becoming a mass casualty casualty event. It was heavily covered up by the Soviets and the East Germans until after the collapse of the Soviet Union and East Germany, and then it was revealed through Stasi documents that a large amount of Germans had actually died because they, much like the Soviets, were getting crammed into boxcars to travel out of East Germany.
Damn, that's rough right there. Honestly, I can understand why the Russians are defecting in such high rates and deserting and running off because the conditions are terrible, honestly, like very, very bad.
Yeah, and I mean, look at these tanks. These are all T-72As, and look at them. I mean, they're literally almost rusting over. Like, most of them don't even have a green color to them. It's like a greenish brown, because it's starting, the paint is even starting to rust off of these tanks. They're that old. Look at these. I mean, these don't even have gun breech covers on them, which are like the fabric covers that go over the gun breech. They don't even have those. Those have literally rotted off.
Yeah, I would guess the Russians don't really have. I'm not sure if the Russians have WD-40 or not, but they probably have a different version of it called something else. How they always off-brand stuff to avoid sanctions and stuff. They probably have like Bliot 40 or something. But they need some on these tanks though, because they are in foul shape. These things aren't even museum pieces. They're in such foul shape.
Actually, Matthew, I heard that it was like Pen 38. It was like Pizdek 38 or something like that. But beyond that, a very interesting sight to see. And once again, showing y'all in literal video evidence how important the Russian railroads are to moving around military equipment inside the Russian Federation that's moving into Ukraine. Suffice it to say, this attack today was quite significant. Not only did it attack railroad infrastructure, key energy infrastructure, oil refineries, oil storage sites, processing plants, and multiple other targets, but it is once again going to be causing a major amount of economic and logistical damage to the Russian Federation, which is already reeling from prior attacks. And this has led a lot of people to wonder, did the United States order this attack by the Ukrainians today, or is this something that they did largely on their own fruition? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so like we mentioned earlier, this was a somewhat rare attack using Storm Shadow missiles, and the Storm Shadow specifically struck a chemical facility which was instrumental in producing weapons for the Russian military, and that was in Bryansk. So the Storm Shadows went to that one location and struck it heavily, and also we saw jet drones, Ukrainian-made cruise missiles, a lot of different high-tech weapons that Ukraine has, but most notably the Storm Shadow. And the big question is, did the U.S. order this attack, since the timing looks a little bit sus? But 49% said no, Ukraine acted totally independently, while 25% said yes, the U.S. ordered the attack, and 18% said I think it was a 50-50 chance that the U.S. might or might not have ordered it. So, me personally, I have a very, very strong suspicion, considering the timing of this literally happened right after the Putin meeting was canceled. I personally believe that U.S. officials likely ordered the attack and told Ukraine to go all in to basically teach Vladimir Putin a lesson today and put the hurt on him since he embarrassed U.S. officials once again. That's my personal hunch, and I'm with the 26%. I think the U.S. had at least some type of hand in it, considering that Storm Shadows were used. And even Storm Shadow is a British-made weapon, or at least it's a British-controlled weapon. The U.S. would still have a hand in that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I'd actually be with the 49%. I do believe that the Ukrainians acted largely independently on this, considering the fact that the Ukrainians generally have not gotten a lot of authorization from what we know publicly on prior attacks that have been conducted throughout this year. Usually these are conducted mostly on the Ukrainians' behalf themselves, especially because we have a good running understanding of this from the prior months, way early on in the current administration, when they were generally acting like Ukraine was the problem in the war. They were still conducting strikes similar to these with the same kind of depth and field of attack that we're seeing right now. And still, they were getting absolutely no approval. As a matter of fact, they weren't even getting any verbal support from the United States at that point. So I would generally assume that while this attack is major, and it is coming on a fairly significant day where the Russians have once again pulled I guess you could say a bamboozle on the United States, I think the Ukrainians more so either planned this in advance and the timing is coincidental, or they gave the green light for this attack today on their own end because they started to see that once again the Russians are acting in bad faith and that they won't be chastised or, mocked by the United States and its current administration for conducting an attack like this when it looked like there might be a possible peace negotiation on the table. So I would generally have to go with a 49% for those reasons, at least at this point. But still,
Also, by the way, I do have a quick question here and also a point I want to make. What happened to Germany sending the Taurus missile to Ukraine? Because that was a big thing for, I think it was like 2 months ago or 3 months ago. Germany was making a huge deal about sending Tauruses. We had assumed that maybe they were going to secretly send Taurus to Ukraine because they had classified all future weapon shipments to the Ukrainian government. But we have not heard or seen the Taurus being fielded by Ukraine yet. And that seems a little bit odd to me. It seems like either Germany's backed off of their commitment to send the Taurus missile, or maybe Ukraine just hasn't been authorized to use them yet. I'm not really sure what the deal is, but so far Ukraine is waiting for the Taurus from Germany, and they're also waiting for the Tomahawk from the United States as well. So I'm not sure what held up the Germans, but it seems like maybe Taurus is not in Ukraine's future. I'm not really sure what the current status of that is.
I would have to say it's a good question. One, we know that the Germans did classify all of their arms shipments, so if it's ever sent, we'll never know. But two, we've never seen the Ukrainians use a Taurus, and we've never seen the Russians confirm the debris on impact from a Taurus at any attack site seen so far. So we don't really know if the Germans have provided it at this moment, and the Ukrainians are still familiarizing themselves with the system and will conduct a strike once they're well off enough to be able to use it, or if they've been provided it and they haven't gotten approval, or whether it's been provided at all. That really is all up to question, because the Germans have completely classified any and all support that they're giving to the state of Ukraine and are not disclosing that information to the public any longer for us to know. So I would have to say, honestly, I hate to say this, I don't mean to be a pessimist on the Germans, but knowing the Germans and how much hesitancy there has been in sending the Taurus up to this point, I would have a feeling that the Ukrainians haven't even gotten one yet.
Yeah, maybe so, possibly. Honestly, though, between the Taurus or the Tomahawk, I'm seeing some people say Ukraine really doesn't need the Taurus anymore. They need the Tomahawk more. I'm not really sure between those two weapons which one would be more effective for Ukraine to have if they had to choose between the two. I think it'd be best if they just had both of them, because Germany had already committed to sending them, and the U.S. had committed to sending the Tomahawk behind closed doors, but then they backed off of it after Putin called. So maybe they'll change that up, possibly. I hope they do, though, because they need either one or hopefully both.
Yeah, I would have to say, honestly, though, as far as the ranges, the Taurus is not as versatile, really. Let's see, Taurus missile. Let me go get that. The Taurus is not as versatile as the Tomahawk, as most Taurus missiles, we believe, have a range very similar to that of the Scalp EG or the Storm Shadow of around 270 nautical miles or 310 miles at a speed of about Mach 0.95. So nearly in the transonic range, but still subsonic. So it at least is similar in speed to a Tomahawk. A Tomahawk can get a similar speed, but it doesn't have the range that a Tomahawk has. So while this thing would be useful, at least against Crimea and against the border oblasts inside of Russia, its usefulness would start to greatly dissipate beyond that. However, on the other hand, U.S.-made Tomahawk cruise missiles, or even foreign-provided Tomahawks from other countries that have been buying them from the United States, could hit about 1,200 miles to 800 miles, and sometimes even 1,500 miles, depending on the variety, into the Russian Federation, pretty much bringing every single critical infrastructure target in range of the Ukrainians as compared to the Taurus. So I'd actually have to say, if we're talking about the two, the Tomahawk is probably going to be a great deal more versatile to the Ukrainians and their ability to attack deeper in Russia and hit targets that haven't been hit before and to cause even greater damage than the Taurus would be, just because of the significant range difference.
Yeah, probably so. The Taurus does have a slight edge, though, because I believe the Taurus I think it's more stealth than the Tomahawk, I believe. And I think the Tomahawk is somewhat stealth, but it's not as stealth as the Taurus, at least according to my knowledge I have on the missiles. I'm not a missile expert, but based on what I know, I think that's what it is. So I'll be curious to see which one it is. And also, it looks like we're doing a little research here. So let's see what the answer is.
Let's see here. I believe, let's see, it incorporates stealth technology. That would most likely mean, if it's incorporating stealth technology, that it has stealth-ish elements to it, but it's not entirely stealth. So I would assume that this thing is probably a low visibility cross-section or signature, meaning that it's still detectable on radar. It just doesn't look as big and glaring a target as it normally would if it was a high visibility target or a high visibility cross-section.
Interesting. So yeah, the Taurus is a slightly, I guess you could say, you could argue its opinion, but I would say the Taurus seems slightly more stealth, but generally it seems like it's almost on par with the Tomahawk. So honestly, either one would be good. It seems like the Tomahawk's range being a little bit longer would be better, but either one, honestly, they just need these weapons in some capacity or another. That's all Ukraine really needs at this point is they need one or the other. So hopefully they send them sooner than later.
Yeah, hopefully they would. And also, by the way, here's another interesting fact. Speaking about low visibility, the Dassault Rafale actually is a low visibility fighter as well. It does incorporate stealth technologies into its design, especially on its fore section. If I get you a front view of the Rafale, it looks near alien-like. Here we go. It looks near alien-like, and it's not stealth, but when hit with a radar pulse from most foreign radar systems, it will visibly appear smaller in its radar cross section than most other aircraft. So this was kind of France's answer to trying to make a fifth generation aircraft, but generally stay fourth generationally in the technological field. And so this, the Rafale is actually one of the few generation 4 plus type aircraft that exist out there where it's almost stealth, but not really.
Very fascinating. Very fascinating.
Yeah, so that's what I'm actually that's kind of the reasoning why I'm saying the Taurus is probably also low visibility as well, because this is low visibility but not entirely stealth. But still, with that, I hope that does address that the best we can, at least about the Taurus and the Tomahawks. And speaking of something to do with radar cross sections, we have been able to hear that major radar cross sections were detected over Vilnius again today, which did lead to the closure of the international airport's airspace at Vilnius, and once again a state of alert inside of Lithuania, as more balloons have been launched again from Lithuania and have forced aircraft like this Airbus, well actually Boeing 737 MAX of the Buzz Airlines to be diverted away from Vilnius as the airspace was closed. We understand that multiple balloons were spotted on some form of radar or visual identification, which closed the airspace around the Vilnius International Airport and is once again leading to an entire fiasco again, much like the first time. We are waiting to see what the Lithuanians are going to do about this. We know that last time they just waited for the balloons to land and then they seized them. We see that at the moment it doesn't really appear that they've shot down any of these over the multiple hours that these have been spotted, and they're once again just waiting for them to land so that way they can be seized again. We don't know if there's going to be any cigarettes involved, if there's cigarettes involved. This is once again another failed smuggling operation like we were assuming the last one was. If there's anything else in them, we might start to see that there's some form of Belarusian or Russian state involvement in the deployment of these balloons over Lithuanian airspace. But a lot of people are voicing their opinions at the moment on this ongoing development, and a lot of people are talking about what in the world could this really be. This is now the second time that it happened. And the first time that we talked about this, there was a decent amount of analysis out there, and a lot of people were in agreement. This may just be some form of a smuggling operation, because we had never heard of something like this being done before, and in the bottom package of these balloons was nothing but cigarettes and cigars, which generally, if you know anything about the criminal underworld, especially in Europe and EU countries, there is a pretty big smuggling operation that involves cigarettes from Belarus and the Russian Federation because of the massive amount of taxes that exist on cigarettes generally inside the European Union. So it led us to believe, because of that fact, it could have been a smuggling operation gone wrong, and the winds actually blew them over the Vilnius airport, and that's what led to the airspace closure. This is now the second time this is happening. And so now a lot of people are wondering, now that this is starting to become a bit of a pattern at this point, is this some other form of hybrid warfare where they're trying to cause economic damage to Lithuania by having them shut down large parts of their airspace, most importantly, the most important part of their airspace around the largest city in the country, Vilnius, to try and cause them any form of economic damage and to further stymie their abilities? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So like the enforcer said, Lithuania did report balloons once again near Vilnius airport. The second time we've seen that in just a matter of a couple of months. And flights had to be diverted as a result, and several went into holding patterns before they were able to land after the balloons cleared out of the airspace. So what are your thoughts about that? And 63% said it's Belarus testing defenses again of Lithuania, while 21% said it's actually cigarette smugglers and they're telling the truth, and 9% said it's a 50-50 chance of either. So we went through this last time we discussed test this. There is a cigarette smuggling operation that's constantly going on between Belarus and Lithuania, and there's a whole bunch of stuff for the reason why that is the case. Mainly it's to evade taxes, because the cigarettes are taxed, and they're trying to evade that by smuggling them into Lithuania. But the problem with that is, this smuggling operations have been going on for a very long time. These smugglers are very, very experienced. They know better than to send this in the direction of Vilnius Airport, which is a major international airport. They know better than to do that. And also, when these get captured, they lose all their cargo value because it gets seized by the government and they don't get it back. So they lose money. So it makes no sense for smugglers to keep sending it in the direction of the airport because they're going to lose their money. So it makes no sense to me. So I would say, generally speaking, in my personal opinion, I think I think Belarus is trying to test Lithuania's detection systems and see how fast these balloons are detected so they can try to find blind spots in their airspace. And I think that's what they're doing. I think it's probably Belarus doing this because it makes no sense. The whole smuggling thing, it really doesn't add up in my personal opinion. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say, folks, it was a really hard sell for us to make the first time when we were on the channel and we were talking about this, and we both came to the conclusion that this may be some sort of a smuggling operation. That was a tough sell, because smugglers would know the prevailing winds. One of the important things, by the way, folks, about the smuggling operation, and to explain to you all the economics of it, because I see some people saying, why balloons? That seems expensive, and so on and so forth. So I'll actually explain to you all the economics behind this. Balloons are very cheap. Insanely cheap. The helium inside of them, or whatever sort of a fuel you use, it could be hydrogen or helium, it's very cheap to get for the large part, and the balloon itself is also wildly cheap. All you do is you take the balloon, costs dollars, you attach a whole bunch of cigarettes to it, and you strap it to the balloon and fly it over. On the other side of the border is another smuggling group, same one working with you on the Belarusian or the Russian side, that waits for these balloons to eventually come down because they map out the prevailing winds in the area and they generally know where they're going to end up. And once they start to land on the ground, the other smuggling group grabs them and then wanders off to go and sell them around and make a good bit of money. There's a huge market for it because of the tobacco taxes that exist in the European Union. However, the problem with these balloon launches here is that we have never seen smugglers, speaking about this particular instance, screw up this badly twice in a row, ever. For one matter, screw up once, we've never seen that, and screw up twice to have the balloons fly right over a major populated area where they start causing significant air control issues. Not only that, another thing about this, folks, is what kind of smugglers would be that stupid to take thousands of dollars of cigarettes and potentially tens of thousands of dollars in profits from those smuggled cigarettes and not even map out the airways in that area, or at least the prevailing winds, to make sure that they're not going to get confiscated by Lithuanian authorities and also catch the attention of the Lithuanian government itself. This whole thing reeks. This would not be what a smuggling group does, especially twice in such a small span of time. This looks to me to be something that the Belarusians and the Russians are doing deliberately as a government action, but they're also trying to make sure that the cargoes on board are plausible enough that it's just chalked up to some form of a smuggling activity instead of anything more insidious or it's more dangerous, more so, like the Belarusians and the Russians trying to interdict Lithuanian airspace around their capital. That's generally what I would believe at the moment, because this happening twice when it's really never happened before, at least around the Vilnius International Airport, is quite suspect in my opinion. But moving on from that news, we also were able to hear that the Polish government today has arrested a large amount of agents. Apparently, the Poland Internal Security Agency has detained 8 people suspected of planning acts of sabotage across the country, according to the Prime Minister Donald Tusk. We already know that there has been large Russian spy rings operating inside of Poland over the years. We have heard of multiple agents being arrested for trying to take pictures of the Polish Navy along the coast and Polish military bases throughout the country, and it appears that they've now uncovered and arrested another major spy ring inside of Poland. We've also been able to hear that in Hungary, the sabotage, at least to some extent, may be continuing, as we've been able to hear that 2 facilities in 2 different countries have caught on fire and exploded within the same night. On Monday, October 20th, a fire broke out at the MOL oil refinery in Hungary, which processes Russian crude delivered through the Druzhba pipeline. No casualties were reported, and the blaze has been extinguished. The cause of the incident is still under investigation. That same night, an explosion occurred at the Lukoil refinery at Plesti in southern Romania, injuring one person. Authorities have opened a criminal case over safety violations and failure to comply with occupational regulations. Here's a video of one of the fires at one of these facilities. We see the fire clearly burning heavily. And also that sound like Hungarian, so this might be in Hungary.
Yeah, it sounds like Hungarian.
Yeah, honestly. It does appear that there may be some acts of sabotage happening on oil refineries and processing facilities within European Union and NATO countries at this point, as we're clearly seeing here. We've also been able to confirm, as well, drones that were spotted over Spain, specifically the Balearic Islands. Now, this is something that's actually a little bit interesting for everyone. The Balearic Islands is this little chain of islands right here. They're actually not that little. The central island, Mallorca, is actually quite large. But the Balearic Islands is a chain of islands that exists off the east coast of Spain, directly under Spanish control. These islands generally have never popped up on our news ever, but just overnight, we were able to hear that there apparently are now drones being spotted in the skies of the Balearic Islands for the first time. Due to the fixation of UAVs over Mallorca Airport, its operation was temporarily suspended and dozens of flights were redirected. This is also quite interesting. Notice again, it's the airport at Mallorca, specifically this one, the Aeroporto de Palmas on San Juan. This one was directly targeted by drone flights. Are y'all starting to notice a pattern here? Let me remind y'all, drones were spotted over the main airport on the island of Mallorca, the largest and most important airport and island in the Balearic Islands. Just several days ago, the Munich International Airport, one of the largest ones in Germany, was also shut down due to drone sightings. We have also seen in Denmark that the Copenhagen International Airport, along with the airport at Aalborg, have also been shut down, major civilian ports of egress, once again due to drone incursions. We have also seen that the Warsaw International Airport has been closed due to drone incursions. We have seen that the Vilnius International Airport has been closed due to drone incursions, and the Oslo Airport has been closed due to drone incursions. Are y'all starting to notice a pattern? Because I certainly am. Every single major airport within the European Union, not including the United Kingdom because it hasn't happened there yet, but every single airport within the European Union that is significant in size, that is within some range of Russia, except for the Balearics, which is the outlier, every single major city with a major airport is seeing that it's getting shut down from drone violations. That is clearly a hybrid warfare act. It doesn't take a lot to put that pattern together. Why in the world are they only showing up over major airfields only? That is trying to cause economic damage and also disruptions to the supply grids and the logistical structures within the European Union. It's very clear at this point. And also, we know that the foreign minister of Poland, Sikorski, has been stating that till the cows come home, and he's clearly right. This is a directed campaign of hybrid warfare by the Russian Federation against civilian aviation within these skies. But before we move on into the rest of our news, because we still have a load of news to cover from East Asia, the Middle East, the Americas, the United States, and also some further developments there today, and also the front lines from Ukraine, which were wildly active today, and also the Russians took major losses on the battlefield, we do want to make sure to take a little bit of a moment to say a big thanks to everyone who's watching so far. There are 15.6 thousand people here right now. That is a lot of people. And on top of that, there has been 56,000 people who watched this stream in the first hour. I've got to thank a lot of y'all. Actually, every single one of y'all. Not just a lot of y'all, every single one of y'all for watching so far. I hope y'all been enjoying this tonight. Both Enforcer Matt and me, we put a high amount of pride and effort into the show every night, and we hope that it's been meeting the standards that we hope that y'all expect every single night so far. If y'all have been enjoying, please make sure to subscribe. We don't do this thing every day for nothing. We do it for the enjoyment of y'all. And when y'all subscribe, we know that a lot of y'all are enjoying it, and it encourages us to keep this thing going. And of course, before we get on into the rest of the news, I do want to take a little bit of a moment to get to talk to all of y'all, and also have us a small bit of a halftime break so folks can go to the restroom and also all that sort of a deal, by answering a couple of questions from the chat before we move on into the rest of our news for the night, and shift gears from all the European news and on into the other world news events that we've heard over the course of the day. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first three super chats before we jump right back to our news, we have our first super chat, which goes to BC Skyman, and he threw in a whopping
Hey!
$80 support tonight. And thank you very much,
Dang!
BC, for returning once again and supporting the channel bigly, and we do appreciate that very, very much. He did throw in a super sticker on one of those, and he threw in the YouTube creature jumping and flipping out of an office chair and turning into a, let's see, a transformer bot, I
A
think, or
mech!
something like that. But huge shout out to you, BC, for that massive support. That is the largest super chat of the night, and we appreciate that very, very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank BC Skyman for the incredibly amazing support and helping this channel to keep on running. BC Skyman didn't throw in a comment, but BC Skyman has been supporting this channel for years and is a big part of how we've been able to make this thing possible. And not only that, a keystone member of the Lee Spring Army. Everyone knows BC Skyman, and I've got to say a humongous thanks to you, BC Skyman, for the incredible support tonight, and of course helping this channel to keep rolling, because folks like you who go over your way to support the channel are the ones who truly make this thing possible every single day. This channel runs ad-free and sponsor-free, and I've just got to say it's an incredible and wonderful thing to know that folks like you, BC Skyman, have always been here with us over the years and help us to keep the news coming out for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people every single month. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our second super chat here goes to Andrew Barbara, who just threw in a $100 support, now the
Dang!
largest super chat of the night. And thank you very much, Andrew, for throwing in that massive support right there. And of course, he is the blue Papa Smurf, as shown in the profile picture right there. But huge shout out to Andrew, and he said, just cause.
And I've got to say, the LSA not only rocks, it rolls. And I'm going to give you a humongous, incredible thanks, Andrew Barbaro, for the support just cause. That support helps us to keep this channel running every day just cause. Because we can. Because folks like you have helped us to be able to keep our lights on, to buy the next Costco chicken. And we all know that life only boils down, folks, to three things: death, taxes, and Costco chickens. Because Costco chickens keep the world going round. They help us to keep fed, help us to keep full, and help us to churn out news every single day like it is nothing. Like a bunch of chickens from a mass-produced farm. And I've got to say a humongous thanks to you once again, Andrew Barbaro. Folks like you are legendary here in the Lee Spring Army, and I've got to thank you incredibly for helping to keep this crowd-funded news channel running. Because it's the viewers like you who help to make this channel possible and help the Lee Spring Army to never truly die. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news at large.
All right, and our last one here of the segment goes to Luke UK, who puts in a 50-pound donation, and thank you very much, Luke, for that very heavy support, the 50-pounder right there, and we appreciate that very, very much, all the way from the UK. And a big shout out to Luke once again, and Enforcer, what say you?
And a big shout out to Luke UK from the UK. It says it in the currency. It's a pound. And I got to be honest with y'all, folks. I got to ask y'all a question here from the United Kingdom. How do y'all carry around all that money? 50 pounds. That's a lot of weight. I mean, hell, I couldn't carry that around. Oh, man, I'm telling you. Oh, man, I get no respect around here. But I do have to say, an amazing thanks to you for the support, Luke UK. All jokes aside, for the support. You didn't throw in a comment, but of course, we are massively appreciative. And I've got to say that it's wonderful to know that folks like you help this channel to keep running all the way from the United Kingdom and are a part of the Lee Spring Army UK division that helps this channel to keep running and is also an integral part of the Lee Spring Army. It's only together as an alliance here in the Western world that we're all able to move forward together. America moves forward with Britain, Britain moves forward with America, and every single one of our allies moves forward with each other. And it's folks like you who are a part of our international community that not only add a great deal of a variety to our channel, at least with the amount of viewers who come from all around the world, but not only that, are one of the people that the United States calls an amazing group of friends and allies that help us to continue to move forward in the world together. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, folks, it is time for us to move on into the rest of the news that we have for the day. And we've got a lot of it, folks. We've got a load of it. And so moving us on over into the People's Republic of China. Also, by the way, folks, since there's a lot of new people here, I do want to make sure to say this. If your super chat has not been answered yet, do not worry. Those were the first 3 super chats we get for the night. We always read off every single super chat, even if y'all only throw in $1, because some people, crazily enough on YouTube, don't shout out $1 super chats. I just don't really get that, because I know that a lot of y'all are giving everything that y'all want to give or giving everything that y'all can give. And we are massively appreciative of all of y'all. So do not worry. If your super chat has not been called out yet, they are always called out. Even if the power goes out right now and our whole stream dies, we will address your super chat on the next night even to make sure that we address it, and thank you greatly for your support. So if you have thrown in the super chat, do not worry. They will all be answered by the end of the night. We just have to get through the rest of the news here, and then we'll be moving on into the entire question segment where we'll address every single super chat and as many live chats as we can. But moving on from that and into East Asia, we are now going to be moving on into the People's Republic of China. The People's Republic of China is a communist utopia, of course, due to implementing limited capitalism within their system. Because communism is stupid and never works in any economic sense on a major scale, they have been able to produce something that the United States never could: skyscrapers. But not just any skyscraper, skyscrapers lit up by LEDs. And not only LEDs, but security cameras that keep an eye on you everywhere you go and identify who you are and what you're saying. And if you say anything out of line, God forbid, you'll be re-educated. But one thing that is apparently happening, at least in those LED lit up skyscrapers with a whole bunch of security cameras inside of them, is a little bit of a schism. It's still going on, and people are continuing to get axed from the Central Military Committee. Yippee! Now, let me explain to y'all something here. Really important. Pay attention. We've got to talk about how the Chinese Communist Party structure works. The Chinese Communist Party is the legalized party that exists within China. It's practically the only political party that is allowed to exist. And while there's other ones on paper, they're just there for show. It's there to pretend like they actually have a democracy, but they're fake. If you look at the system, the entire thing's rigged. But beyond that, the Chinese Communist Party by law is the ruling party in China. However, there is a dual structure of power that exists. The Chinese Communist Party will vote for a president of China. That's generally done through the Chinese Communist Party Congress. They'll vote a member of the Congress to be the president of China, but the president of China also takes an additional role, and this is where a lot of people get confused. Xi Jinping is not just the president of China, he is the chairman of China. A lot of y'all have probably heard in older history that whenever anyone talked about Mao Zedong, or the funnier version of his name, Mao Zedong, they generally called him Chairman Mao, and that's because of his military position within China. When you take up the role of being the military leader of China, you're the civilian leader, you are the president of China, but you are also called the chairman of the People's Liberation Army, or specifically of the Central Military Committee, which is the organization that runs the People's Liberation Army. So, in a sense, to put it in a different way, it's the exact same thing as the President of the United States being the President and also the Commander-in-Chief at the same time. It's pretty much the exact same system, just with a different name. Instead of it being the Commander-in-Chief, they're the Chairman of the CMC. There has been an ongoing schism that's been going on for a couple of years now, but it seems to be reaching a fever pitch at this point inside of China. Basically, to explain it, in the modern day, with Xi Jinping in control of the Chinese Communist Party and the chairman of the Central Military Committee, Xi Jinping has been moving forward into a completely new ideological framework for China. China has generally worked either on Maoist ideology or some form of a toned-down Maoist ideology throughout most of its history, until Xi Jinping came along. Xi Jinping is bringing forward a brand new type of a cult of personality surrounding him, and with that, a different group of ideals that the Chinese people and the Chinese government and the military, as a result, are supposed to follow. Here in the West, there hasn't really been a good name given to it yet, but here on the channel, we call that Xiism or Jinpingism, kind of like Maoism. This has started to create an issue, however. The People's Liberation Army, which is practically a political body in itself inside of China, which is of course subordinate to the Central Military Committee and Chairman Xi, who is the chairman of the military, they are strictly Maoist. And when I mean Maoist, they are Maoist to the greatest extent. They practically still live within the era of the Cultural Revolution ideologically, which means that they heavily believe in the teachings of Mao and the Little Red Book. This has ended up being an issue because the more that Xi Jinping continues to push forward his Xiist ideology in China and continues to mold the Chinese Communist Party and the Central Military Committee with that, this is causing rifts between the People's Liberation Army, once again, staunchly conservative communists, and Xi Jinping, which is looked at more so as a progressive, not really a progressive, but a progressive to his own means. Basically, a push to the pull. So the People's Liberation Army has been having a huge problem with Xi Jinping because of this. There have been questions of loyalty that have started to arise within the People's Liberation Army on who's loyal to Xi and who isn't. This generally was attempted to be curbed, at least initially, by Xi Jinping in the 2016 military reforms that were conducted in China. Not only did that greatly modernize the administrative and strategic position of the People's Liberation Army, but it also simultaneously conducted an anti-corruption campaign. In most dictatorships, anti-corruption campaigns are not anti-corruption campaigns. They're only that in name. What they really are, however, is that they're looking for people who have questionable loyalties to the leader, and then they root those people out. Or for people who are generally looking like they're incompetent, they're also used to root those people out as well. We can see that in Russia clearly. Multiple people who have either failed in fighting the war in Ukraine or have started to become unfriendly to Putin have somehow, crazily enough, always ended up being arrested or killed, but generally arrested and then charged with some sort of a crime under the anti-corruption campaigns, and then they're put away in prison for an indefinite period of time for the large part. Same thing happens in China. So we have been able to hear that this is now, I believe, the third general that we've heard of that has been removed. President Xi, or Chairman Xi, if we're talking about the Central Committee, has removed China's number 2 general in an escalating purge of China's military leadership. From what we know currently, He Weidong is the most senior officer to be taken down by Xi Jinping, but from what I'm understanding, this is a different general than He Weidong that was removed today. We're still not getting their names, weirdly enough, at least specifically, but it is showing that a continued purge against the Central Military Committee, which is the highest level of leadership in the Chinese military, well, in the Central Military Committee, and therefore the People's Liberation Army, is still going on. So we're assuming at this point that there is at least a perceived point of criticality that almost is being reached at this point in China, where so many officials in the Central Military Committee are being purged because it's feared, I would suppose, that they're about to conduct some sort of a coup d'etat against Xi or try and turn the CCP against him simultaneously and overthrow him. So it's quite interesting sort of an event, and at this point, although there's only a little bit of murmurings coming out at least, it does appear that there is a lot of major disruptions that are happening within the Chinese political system as a result of this, and that a continued crackdown is ongoing that's happening at almost a lightning pace compared to what it's been doing for the past several years. But it does appear that a lot of people are actually weighing in their thoughts and opinions on this purge that is happening within the Central Military Committee and how China, or generally Xi Jinping, is going to be faring this in the long run. And Matthew, what are people thinking about Winnie the Pooh and the crisis that he finds himself in right now?
All right, so right now, Winnie the Pooh is having a massive honey crisis, and he's going to expel Eeyore and Piglet from the kingdom to make sure that he can hold on to his power. So, in all seriousness, though, Xi is actually purging people, his top military leadership, one by one, and this is becoming a very big thing, and we're still not really sure what has led to this moment. We're really not sure what has led to it, but clearly something internally is happening within Xi's power structure, and it's causing a big crisis politically. So, will Xi survive the crisis? And 57% said yes, Xi will survive the crisis and remain in power, while 21% said no, Xi's power will not last, and 14% said it's a 50-50 chance of either. And me personally, I'm solidly with the 57%. I think Xi will definitely survive the crisis. He has an iron grip on the government, and the fact that he's eliminating people from their power and from their positions indicates that he sees the rumblings happen, and he's currently responding to it. So that usually indicates a pretty healthy dictatorship, or at least an authoritarian government, and it looks like Xi is doing what they usually do, which is pretty much just getting rid of whoever disagrees with them. So I'm with the 57%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I would believe that Xi will survive the crisis. It generally appears that that's usually the running historical trend, is that these purges usually solidify the position of a leader at the cost of valuable experience and knowledge that these officials had in the carrying out of war, meaning, in a bit of a double sense, Xi will stay in power, but this also might limit their abilities to conduct an effective war against Taiwan in the long run. That might actually end up being a caveat of this. But I would have to be with the 57% as well. I don't really think Xi is going to be in that much of a threat of getting overthrown at this point, and I would highly doubt that he will disappear as the leader of China anytime soon. It's highly likely, based off of the historical standards of these attempted coups generally failing, he will probably end up dying as the leader of China from old age. That's how Kim Il-sung went out. And if y'all don't know, this is actually something a little bit interesting. North Korea actually had very similar attempted coups that happened in their early history, which is going to blow a lot of people away because who in the hell has ever heard of a coup attempt in North Korea? It never happens, at least in the modern day. But way back at the beginning of North Korea, there were actually 3 attempted coups, especially the coup attempt of July of 1962, which ended in the death of 30 top officials because they failed the coup attempt against Kim Il-sung. And that, of course, solidified the Kim family's position pretty much as the ruling family in North Korea, and the purges continued on, even into the present day, to ensure that they still stay within power, because it was learned all the way back then by Kim Il-sung that people will always be attempting to overthrow them, so it's best to keep pretty much an endless purge going, no matter who's in charge, to keep power. The same thing will probably happen with Xi. However, there is no family monarchical dynasty that will be created in China as a result of this. This will be very similar to the Stalin era purges, where the people who have questionable loyalty will be purged, he'll remain in power, but one day he'll drop dead from a stroke or something like that, and then they'll end up bringing in a more, if we can call the communists ever this, a more liberal form of governance, like Khrushchev to Stalin, or whoever will end up taking the reins from Xi. But that's something that generally most likely will happen inside of China based off of their political structure and how historically these attempted coups and purges usually end up turning out. Still,
Man, it's just wild. It's just wild, though. Winnie the Pooh's going off. Like, he is really going off right now. He is protecting that honeypot like no other at this point right there. He really is expelling Piglet and also Eeyore. And next, he'll be staring over and saying, "What you looking at, Owl?" It's like, honestly, he's going crazy, like expelling people. It's really wild. I would seriously be curious to know, what is the main tension that's causing a internal dissension amongst Xi's power structure? Is it the Taiwan situation? Is it the Russia situation? Which one is it that's leading to a big power struggle? Because something has to be the crux of it, but they keep things extremely secretive, like within their internal political structure, and I have no idea personally. I would really don't even have an idea.
yeah, also, one other thing. I see a lot of people saying this in the chat, and I'll explain really quickly why this wouldn't necessarily not be the case. Some people are saying that it's actually another vice chairman, Zhang, who's actually conducting the purge against Xiist loyalists inside the Central Military Committee. And generally, that couldn't be the case. And I'll explain why. Because some people are saying I don't really know a lot about how the Chinese military, well, the Central Military Committee or the CCP works. And I think that some of these people may not know this, but the Chinese Communist Party has primacy over the PLA. Whenever you see in the PLA's military structure, say a company commander, there is a political officer with the same rank, company commander, political officer, that is superior in authority to that of the military commander. Meaning that while the People's Liberation Army is a separate entity and a political body in a sense, they still have the Chinese Communist Party's fingerprints all over them. The Chinese Communist Party largely runs the PLA, and the party is the military for the large part as well, due to the supremacy of the political officers' leadership over that of the actual unit commanders. So with that in mind, Zhang cannot be conducting a purge against Xi loyalists because he has no authority by the Constitution of China or by that matter, the Constitution of the party, to be conducting purges of his own outside of the Chinese Communist Party. Xi is completely in control in the country. He did just get himself a nomination, or at least an approval, to be president for life. He doesn't even have to face a re-election at this point until he dies. So it would be incredibly odd for Xi to see Zhang conducting a purge against Xi loyalists in the Central Military Committee, completely outside the purview of the Chinese Communist Party, and not purge him as a threat to his power. I mean, the truth is that he could easily do that because Xi Jinping is the chairman of the Central Military Committee. If he doesn't like what Zhang's doing, he's gone. So that generally is how we're understanding that is working at the moment, because there really is no way, by the structure of the Chinese Communist Party, that Zhang could be conducting a purge of Xiist loyalists, at least with how it's structured. And
Also,
so
Also, by the way, real quick, I see a lot of people, it seems to be the popular opinion here that the reason why they're currently having a political struggle in China is generally because of the economy. I would say that while China's economy is struggling, like it's certainly not doing good, the economic issues worldwide are generally global, in my opinion. I think every country is struggling right now just because there's a bit of a, I would say, a political reason behind it, but we can't get into that. It's too deep right now. But we do see that China's GDP is slowing. It's down to 4.8% growth, which is down from 5.2% in the previous quarter. So they have had a slowdown in their GDP growth. So that's a sign that they're struggling. But I would say that pretty much all countries around the world are having something similar happen to it. And obviously the property downturn, the property issue, that's still a big problem right now. They're having a big real estate crisis that they've really never fixed ever since that very large real estate investment firm inside of China went under, which was a huge failure for them. So I don't know. I don't think the economy would cause them to try to overthrow Xi. I don't think it's gotten to that point yet, but it could cause maybe some aggravation. But I don't think it could lead to an overthrow, at least right now, in my opinion.
I don't think it could. And also, folks, I have a feeling that tomorrow, Xi is going to show up to the Central Military Committee meeting, and he's going to look at the general that's sweating at the end of the table. He's going to go, "What's wrong, General So? Chicken?" and then they're going to arrest him and remove him. But anyways, moving on from that, we also got to hear that North Korea conducted a missile test today, with the missile landing within the East China Sea. Apparently, this is most likely, at least according to South Korean intelligence, a Hwasong 20 that was test fired today. The Hwasong 20 is a fairly new intercontinental ballistic missile, and we did see it showcased, at least inside of North Korea at a military parade recently, and we did get to hear that South Korea's defense minister did state that movement had been conducted that showed that there was going to be a possible test of the Hwasong 20 several days ago. So we were assuming that this missile launch today was the test of the Hwasong 20, and apparently the test was successful as the vehicle actually did land inside the East China Sea. So it appears the test may have been a success. But moving on out of East Asia and on towards the middle of the East, we have also been able to hear some interesting statements by the Islamic Republic of Iran. Are y'all ready for these? I'm certainly ready for them. We were able to hear that this is what Khamenei had to say. Khamenei has been going on an insano rant on Twitter, and asking why in the world America has a right, like, stupid questions, folks, but why does America have a right to interfere in Iran's nuclear weapons program? Literally said that up front. Like there's an actual argument to be had there that we just ought to let the guy sit there and develop his weapons to kill Americans and not do anything about it. But beyond that, he did state this. Trump thinks he destroyed Iran's nuclear industry. Very well. Let him continue to live in this delusion. And what I'm hearing, while Khamenei is hearing himself standing up to the big man, what I'm hearing is that he's justifying the next Operation Midnight Hammer for us right now out of his own mouth. Big thanks to Khamenei for that. He's pretty much giving us our reason for a war up front. We also were able to hear that apparently the leader of Iran, Khamenei, stated to the president of the United States, "You're the enemy of the Iranian nation. No higher honor could be held by anyone in Iran. You aren't a friend of the Iranian nation." Honestly, folks,
Who the hell would want to be a friend of Iran? Iran's a radical terroristic state. It's like, who wants to be the friend of that? Not us.
also, I just got to say this really quickly. Who the hell wants to be friends with a guy who looks like an evil wizard from a Lord of the Rings movie? Nobody. Like, I wouldn't want to be friends with a guy who looks evil. I mean, look at him. He wears all black all the time. That's something that usually you would see in, like, a movie where Darth Vader or Emperor Palpatine is around and they're supposed to be the evil guys. Nobody does that. This guy does that. And for some reason, he thinks that makes him look like a good guy. The guy looks like he reeks of evil. Like, just from the way he dresses alone. Beyond
You
that.
better not to blow up my nuclear shit. He's gonna make me go loco in this bitch.
Call out my generals, and they said they're all dead, sir. But beyond that, folks, I have a feeling that the Iranians or like the Iranian government is cruising for a bruising, talking that smack. They're about to get bombed again, and honestly, they're asking for it. Sitting there and telling everyone that your nuclear weapons program is still up and running, when that's clearly in violation of all nuclear non-proliferation treaties on the planet, it's generally begging yourself to get bombed again here in the near future. So I have a feeling that Israeli air campaigns and American air campaigns are probably going to start up again on the Iranians here in the near future to try and destroy their weapons programs, hopefully once and for all. But I'll be honest with y'all, nothing is ever going to stop the weapons programs forever. The only thing that's going to stop the weapons programs for once and for all would be to go in there and throw Khamenei out, and the whole government with it. Pretty much the bathtub and the bathwater as well, completely out of the window with the Iranians. The Iranians are nothing but trouble in this current government. They are radical, they are crazy, they sponsor terrorist groups throughout the entirety of the region, and not only that, around the globe, and they're working on a nuclear weapons program that they've already made it wildly clear they're going to target and try and kill Americans with. And also, another thing that I gotta say, folks, this is something that I've seen some people say, this is absolutely ridiculous. In Iran, they have a slogan, death to Israel and death to America. They say it every single time they end parliament and start it. Khamenei says it. Everyone in Iran in the government says that. And so I've taken that as they're wanting to kill Americans. But according to some people, that's mistaken, because Khamenei gave a little caveat to that. Death to America is just a little slogan, according to him. It only means death to the U.S. government, not to the American people. But at the same time, I want you to see the hypocrisy in that statement that this clown has made. At the same time he says that, they're making a nuclear weapon that clearly, if it was fired at the United States, it's going to kill hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of innocent civilians. So clearly, when they say death to America, they mean to kill Americans, not just the U.S. government. So I gotta say this, folks. Any country that ever chants death to America is an enemy of the Republic, foremost and primarily. Very few countries have the gall or the gobs to smack to even say something like that. The only ones who say it is North Korea, and they only say it because they've got a nuclear shield to hide behind. These clowns inside of this country don't even have a nuclear shield to hide behind yet, and yet they'll continue to chant this stuff until we end up overthrowing them. It is obviously clear that these people, much like many others, do not have America's best intentions in mind. We're not even, and I want to make this clear, folks. I'm not speaking on any sort of a premise where the U.S. has to protect another country here. I'm talking about the United States defending itself. If a country openly says that they want to kill Americans and that they want to destroy the United States of America itself, these people are not our friends, and any sort of weapons programs that they're working on, like a nuclear weapons program, is going to end up killing us one day. They're going to aim those nuclear weapons at us. Barring the Israelis even from this conversation right now, just speaking to all of the Americans here at the moment, they want to kill us. Like you and me and everyone here. They're making that wildly clear, and these nuclear weapons are an extension of them getting closer to making that a reality. So I would have to say the U.S. should heavily be considering starting another air campaign against the Iranians and destroying their nuclear weapons programs once and for all, and maybe even possibly extending that to decapitating this regime of evil inside of this region that not only is killing tons of people within the Middle East through their heartless and cruel actions by sponsoring all of these terrorist groups, but are also trying to directly bring about the demise and death of hundreds of thousands and millions of Americans whenever they get the chance.
Also, Iran is so sick, they still can't even provide water for their citizens in the major cities. They're still having that water crisis, by the way. They've not solved that. So their citizens are not even able to get the basic living necessities, which is simply drinking water. But yet Iran keeps throwing millions and millions and millions of dollars into their nuclear development program, and also begging for the U.S. to return and bomb these nuclear sites inside of Iran by obviously egging on the West to go and attack them by being radical. So it's really wild. Like, the Iranian government is not even really a government at this point. It simply exists to terrorize the West, and that's it. They can't even provide for their own people. It's really a plague.
It really is a plague. And also, someone said, you were wrong. Iran was never a threat for the U.S. When is that true? When in history has that ever been true? Especially right now. Iran has never been a threat to the U.S. So the people who just chant for our deaths every day in that country, death to America, apparently not a threat. I don't know if you know how the law works, buddy, but here in America, if you tell someone a threat like that, like you want to kill them, that's considered to be a felony. Generally, I take that premise, the legal premise, from the domestic law in the United States, and I'll apply that internationally. Any country that's openly advocating for the death of your nation and its people is clearly a threat to you. It's just a matter of them not able to materialize the ability to actually kill you yet. These people are openly a threat. They've been saying that since since 1979, when they founded the Islamic Republic. They're still a threat today. They're definitely a threat today because they're working on nuclear weapons that finally make that dream a reality of seeing a bunch of Americans embroiled in a nuclear hellfire of their ICBMs that are now capable of reaching the United States itself, at least on its east coast. That is just ridiculous. I mean, the Iranians have never been a threat to America when they literally cheer on death to America and death to Israel as a slogan every day. I mean, that's one of the most take bros I've ever seen in a minute. But moving on out of that, we've also been able to hear that there's not good news coming out of Lebanon at the moment, because it appears that Hezbollah is rebuilding its efforts faster than the Lebanese army can dismantle, according to Western intelligence officials speaking to the Jerusalem Post. Basically, the Lebanese government isn't able to dismantle Hezbollah as quickly as the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is able to build the thing back up. So basically, Hezbollah is never going to disappear because the Lebanese government cannot dismantle them quick enough. Even if they are dismantling them, that's really the question. I don't even think they're dismantling, just to be straight up with you all. But anyways, we also were able to see airstrikes inside of southern Lebanon as well. The Israelis are still conducting their airstrikes against them, which is clearly showing us, at least for now, the Israelis are trying to stay up on the ball and help to dismantle them a little bit quicker. In the meantime, we also were able to hear the British peacekeepers are going to be deployed to Israel to monitor the ceasefire after the U.S. requested it, and we've also been able to hear that after the ceasefire was violated by the Hamas forces, Netanyahu stated that Israel had dropped 153 tons. That's about 240,000 pounds of bombs on Sunday in Gaza. I don't know why that was said like a brag, because I'll be entirely honest with y'all. Generally, I said you can respond however you want. The last time we talked about this, that's a good bit of overkill, really, to drop 153 tons of bombs for one ceasefire violation. It did kill 5 Israeli soldiers, I believe, and that should be responded to 100%. But dropping about a freight locomotive's worth of bombs on Gaza in response, that is getting into the range of overkill, almost trying to force the ceasefire to be broken because of the response. Still, we were able to hear that in the meantime, apparently, at least within the U.S. government, according to sources who spoke to the New York Times, U.S. officials said they were increasingly concerned that Netanyahu could dismantle the Gaza peace deal. So it kind of seems like some U.S. officials are kind of getting on the same page as what I was saying right there, to where this almost is such a large response to the ceasefire violation that it's almost trying to force the ceasefire to just break due to the pressure that it's being put under. So we'll see what comes out of that, but I'll be honest with y'all, like we were saying on Sunday, this is clearly not good. Like if we cannot say this clearly enough, the Israelis want to break Hamas, and Hamas wants to break Israel. The two of them don't even want the ceasefire. This is obviously clear. That's why the U.S. is so scared that it's going to get broken. It's because no one wants this thing. So this is going to start up again here real soon. And once again, I ought to be showing everyone that just because you want to say that you're a peacemaker doesn't mean you can always make a peace everywhere in the world. Sometimes there's just no way to make a peace, and this is one of those instances right here. You just can't really do it. But anyways, moving on from that and out of the state of Israel, we also got to hear down in the Americas, at least for now, that Colombia has recalled its ambassadors to the United States of America as the diplomatic spat between the two continues. Apparently, this is due to the escalating military tensions and the strike on the Colombian drug boat. In the meantime, in Puerto Rico, we have been able to hear of the continued ongoing military buildup in this area, and we've also heard that escalation is apparently going to be commencing soon, at least according to what the administration has told allied countries within the region. Once again, we're not even going to cover the whole Venezuela thing. War is imminent down here practically every day. It's just on the cusp of happening every single day, and it's not, so we're waiting to see what's happening with that. We're not going to keep hyping that up and overanalyzing that for the large part, because we keep overanalyzing that, and we end up at the same place every single day. It's going to happen at some point. We're just waiting for it, at least for now. So, moving on out of Puerto Rico, and on up into Washington, D.C., we have gotten a couple of interesting statements. For one, apparently, according to Zelensky, from what we've been able to hear, many of y'all heard the story that the president of the United States was the one telling the Ukrainians to give up the Donbass for little parts of Kherson and Zaporizhia in return, and the Ukrainians refused that. Apparently, it wasn't the president, at least according to Zelensky. It was actually Witkoff who pushed the idea, according to Zelensky. The president of Ukraine revealed that it was the U.S. envoy Witkoff who brought up the idea of Ukraine giving up Donbass during their meeting in Washington. Zelensky responded firmly, saying that Russia's so-called referendums were a farce conducted after the occupation. The Russians claimed they held a vote among their people, but between the invasion and that so-called referendum, 10 years had passed. When Witkoff referred to the fact that the result of these referendums were written into Russia's constitution, Zelensky replied, "If tomorrow Putin adds something else there, are we supposed to give it up again? And if I add 2 Russian regions to Ukraine's constitution, will they withdraw from those territories?" I gotta be honest with y'all, I can't really make this clear enough. Witkoff needs to be removed and replaced with another special envoy. It's clear at this point that there's multiple different ways we can analyze this, but one, he either doesn't know what he's doing, or two, he has a clear bias towards the Russians, which you're not supposed to have as a negotiator. You're supposed to be impartial because we're trying to reach a middle ground between the two. And this either is showing some sort of impartiality towards the Russians, or this is showing that he doesn't know what he's doing, one or the other. This isn't really a good move. And I would have to be straight up honest with y'all. I have not really been a big fan of any of the suggestions or statements that he's made in particular as a special envoy in any situation, because it always seems like he's way out of his league or his depth, in my personal opinion. But moving on from that, we also have been able to hear some additional information about the upcoming Chinese tariffs. According to the president, tariffs on China will be about 155% on the 1st of November, meaning that... go ahead.
I said, damn. I said, that's crazy right there. Honestly, I'll just go ahead and raise them up to like 1,500%. Honestly, here's why I don't understand. When they raise tariffs beyond 100% and they raise it to like 155%, does that mean that China has to pay 55% on top of the full value to get the item into America? What does that mean?
So what it generally means is that for anyone to ship anything to the United States, the end consumer or the purchaser here in America is going to have to pay the difference of that tariff. So if something costs, say, $100 to produce, that means that it's going to cost $155 on top of that, so $255 to ship that product into the country. So basically, it'll become economically unviable to conduct any form of trade with the People's Republic of China.
That's kind of wild, actually. So that means they're paying 55% above the value of the good to import it. That's really wild, honestly. God, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's absolutely insane, folks. So basically, if you want to import anything from China, you're paying on top of the price of something. So if an item is $100, not only are you paying another $100, but you're also paying another $55 on top of that in tariffs. So $155 in total for every $100 of goods that you're importing from China. So a $100 good that would have usually been imported under a 10% tariff or a 5% tariff, which would have made the total of the good being imported $105 or $110. Now it's going to be $255 as a result of the tariff. So y'all can see, of course, that that's beating out any sort of profitable margin that you can make from Chinese trade. Usually profit margins are not that great, or even get close to being that great on most products that are purchased and sold within the United States from Chinese trade. So it pretty much makes it economically unviable any longer to conduct any form of trade. So I'll explain to y'all how that will work on a business level. So let's say you import every day $100 of goods from China. You have on that $100 product a $150 price margin, MSRP, in which it's sold to the public. So you're making about a 50% margin of profit, but once we include the 5% tariff or the 10% tariff that usually would be standing on that, you're still making about a 50% profit. It's close to about 40% or so, but it's a profit margin that you can work with, and it's quite a lucrative one at that. Now, if we add that 155% tariff to that, your MSRP to sell it to the public is $150. But with that tariff added on to import that good, now that good is costing $255 to get into America. So at that point, if you continue to try and sell the item at $150, you are now taking about a $155 loss on selling that product. So either you raise the price, which will usually knock it out of your consumer pool's price bracket, so basically your customer's price bracket, completely knocked out of that park, no one's most likely going to buy it, or you just completely shut down business. That's basically your two options.
Wow. Yeah, that's honestly crazy because I'm doing some quick research on it because I know a little bit about how this works, but not a whole bunch because it's not really our wheelhouse here. We don't do economics very much. But just to answer this one question right here, according to what I've read, when a U.S. company buys goods from China, it has to pay the tariff to U.S. customs when those goods enter the country. So it's not the Chinese company sending the goods that pays it; it's the U.S. company buying the goods from China that pays it. So when, let's say, a small business in America is buying goods from China to sell and resell in their store to make money, then the business in America is the one getting hit by that 155% tariff. It's not the Chinese company. The only thing that happens is, like the enforcer just mentioned, is that U.S. company must raise the price dramatically to account for that massive tariff, or they just have to stop importing that product altogether. But if you see the objective behind it, it looks like the U.S. is trying to encourage the products to be manufactured in the United States. But the problem is, manufacturing right now in the United States is so expensive, it almost is on par with the tariff that's being charged because it's so expensive to manufacture in the United States. So honestly, it seems like it's going to run a lot of people out of business, really. It seems like it's going to run a lot of American companies out of business, is what that sounds like.
Yeah, it actually does. So basically, folks, to explain a tariff is not a tax on another country trading with us. A tariff is pretty much a punitive fine that's imposed on domestic businesses to not conduct business with another country. That's generally how it works in actual practice. So I see some people bringing up some stuff, and I'll explain to y'all the harsh reality of things here. Some people say, well, this will definitely encourage people to, say, build or buy American or to produce in America. So there is a lot of issues with that, and I'll explain as many of them as I can that I can think of off the top of my head. One, a lot of factories do not exist in this country that produce the goods that they produce inside of China currently. So those new factories would have to be built here. Factories are not cheap and they do not pop up overnight. So that factory will take several years to be constructed. And it will also cost most likely millions of dollars to build a small factory. Not only that, you also have to get the machinery and tooling involved, which could be somewhat of a lengthy and difficult process, especially if most of those industrial machines that were produced at machinery and tooling are also in another country like China. And on top of that, over the several years that that factory is being built, your company can't even profitably import any goods from China to continue to sell to keep their business afloat. So by the time that that factory is about a year and a half into its 3-year construction period, also cutting out all of the government regulations where you have to get approval from the EPA, so on and so forth, to build that factory, which also adds on to that time, your business has gone broke because you can't even sell any goods to the public and continue to float your operations or even build up any reserve capital to build that factory. Not only that, a lot of businesses in America are small businesses, usually meaning that they only have a couple of $100,000 in their business bank accounts in reserve, meaning that for a lot of these small businesses, it's entirely financially unfeasible to even build a factory because they don't even have the reserve capital to push forward up front to even build one of those factories. And of course, they're not going to be making any profits to pretty much conduct a payment installment plan to the construction companies to be able to build those factories because they don't have anything to sell and they're hemorrhaging money the entire time these tariffs are running. Another thing is that even if the factory is built, you have to find an actual usable workforce. And what's crazy, folks, is that a lot of Americans are unskilled in factory labor, and a lot of them would have to learn pretty quickly how to get involved in factory work. Considering that our nation is generally geared towards the services industries, and also unemployment is only around 5% or 7%, which is generally considered a little bit above average, but not insanely above average, there's not even a spare work pool to begin with to actually populate these factories with workers, if they even are able to be built in several years, when most of these companies have already gone bankrupt, to be able to work in them, because there's really no spare workforce available to transition over there. On top of that, you would also have to pay these people competitive wages. They would have to be getting paid more at this point. We're just shifting people from one industry to another. They would have to get paid more for factory work than they would in the services industry, which usually is the inverse. You usually get paid less for factory work than services work. So that means that you would have to add on the cost of the labor force, the cost of the factory, and also the cost of the raw materials that you would need in this factory to produce a finished good, meaning that the price of an American good produced at the same product type, exact same product type, in a factory in America will cost a great deal more, meaning that the price point is a lot higher, usually most of the time about 100 to 125% higher, which then means that even to buy American, it would at that point be in the same price bracket as a Chinese good that's being imported with about a 155% tariff, which once again, most of the United States, at least consumer-wise, is living paycheck to paycheck, so nobody just has expendable hundreds of dollars to then expend on every single additional good that they normally would be buying in the current economy. So basically, this is infeasible to really work with. This is practically an economic apocalypse for a lot of small businesses if this stays on the table, and for an incredibly long period of time, over months, this could lead to the death of a large amount of small businesses because they just will not be able to financially survive the fallout.
And also, it's like what is the United States doing to offset the burden on the U.S. Taxpayer and also U.S. business people as well, like small businesses? Because if they're going to force small businesses to stop buying from China by raising the tariff so high it's like 155%, these businesses can't afford to import from China anymore, and also it's too expensive to manufacture in the United States. So what is the government doing to lessen the blow on the small businesses? Are they giving them tax breaks? Or I mean, I'm being a little bit facetious here by saying that, because obviously they're not giving them tax breaks. It seems like they should do something to try to assist, because obviously that's putting a massive strain on small businesses. And once again, this is all politics aside, folks. People's livelihoods don't matter whether or not you're right or left. If people are going broke, people are going broke. It doesn't matter what political side you're from then. So they need to do something about that. That's really wild, and nobody seems to be doing a damn thing about it at this point. So hopefully someone wakes up and does something, or maybe our politicians get their act together and help people, especially small businesses. Because if we wipe out all the small businesses left in the country, we're only left with mega corporations, which is obviously not good for competition or good for anything.
Yeah, I would have to say it's not really good for much of anything, and I don't think a lot of people are understanding this. The whole thing doesn't shift overnight just because you believe that it can. This is going to destroy a lot of small businesses, and not only that, jack up prices on a lot of goods that y'all buy. I don't know how well y'all are all financially. I don't know if y'all have millions of dollars in the bank, but considering how the US is stratified economically at the moment, most of y'all probably only have a couple of $1,000s in savings that are watching this channel right now, meaning that if you're in support of this at the moment and you're saying that these tariffs are a great idea and this trade war is wonderful, you're probably about to go broke here really soon just trying to buy basic essentials, because a decent amount of those, at least consumer good wise, are from China, at least at the moment. There are some that come from the European Union and other items, more expensive ticket items like automobiles and such, but a lot of the day-to-day items that y'all buy that are generally cheap and generally throwaways or anything along those lines, those are going to become a lot more expensive to you on a daily basis. So if you think the grocery store runs are expensive right now, and if you think that the economy is already doing pretty bad and a lot of small businesses are shuttering, you're about to see that that's about to accelerate a lot more. If you don't believe me, just wait and see. You'll find out anyways. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And also, folks, like I'll have to say, I'm not even really here to debate on this. This is just the straight up facts. If you don't believe me, that's fine. We can wait in a couple of months. And the truth is, y'all are either going to be broke because we were right, or you're not and we were wrong, and then we'll eat our foot on that, and that'll be that. But generally, considering that a lot of folks can go broke, especially a lot of y'all watching right now, and some of y'all who may even be saying that this is a great idea, you might want to think about this a little bit, because it might end up affecting you pretty badly if this ends up going poorly like we're saying it will.
I
But
think
anyway,
most of our audience is retired, actually. So I think most of our audience might be good. But there also, by the way, we do have business owners in the chat, by the way. But I think most of the audience though is retired, if I'm not mistaken. I'll probably see a bunch of people pop up in a minute saying, "No, I'm like a mega business owner in here. I'm not trying to get hit by it or something like that." But I don't know. I think that's our demographic though.
yeah, I would think so for the larger part, but for, also for you, I mean, hell, even for y'all, if y'all are retired, those retirement savings are going to start shedding away pretty quickly after this sets in after a couple of months. It's not going to look too good. So, just putting that, once again, folks, gotta say, if you disagree with me, that's fine. Just give it a couple of months and we'll see. I mean, either I'm wrong and I'm wrong, and then we're better for wear than ever at that point. Everyone's buying American. Or I'm right, and a lot of y'all are going to be going broke, so, the alternative is if I'm right, there's a lot of consequences for you watching right now. If I'm wrong, there's no consequences for anybody. So, we'll just wait and see, I suppose. But anyways, with that, we have been able to get a lot of people talking about the escalation near Venezuela and what people are thinking about that. And so, Matthew, what do you got on that? And what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so this is a question here. Honestly, I'll be honest, this is not an original question, but I'm still asking it because we are still being held in suspense as to what's happening with Venezuela and the massive U.S. military buildup down there on their coast. So we did hear today that sources say that U.S. allied nations have been briefed on the upcoming escalation near Venezuela. And what are your thoughts? 38% said an aerial attack will occur soon on Venezuela, and 35% said invasion will occur soon, and 17% said nothing is going to happen. So honestly, my opinion is still the same. I think an aerial attack is very likely on Venezuela by the U.S. military. Invasion is less likely, but I wouldn't rule it out though, because we have so many assets and soldiers in the region. An invasion could occur. It is possible with the assets that are currently stationed there. But I would say, just from a practicality standpoint, well, I'm kind of applying my own logic to it, but invasion would be very unwise, in my personal opinion. I'm not sure if the U.S. Concurs with that right now, the U.S. government, but invasion would be highly unwise. So maybe they'll do it, maybe not. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to go with 38%. I think we're mostly going to conduct airstrikes because the current administration likes to operate quickly, whether it's efficient. Well, it's never efficient, but it is quick. And the quickest way to do anything is just to bomb someone from the air and then leave. So I have a feeling that airstrikes are coming soon, but not a ground invasion. Ground invasion might be in the future at some point, but I'm more so leaning towards airstrikes. So I hope that does address that the best that we can, at least in my opinion. And moving on out of the Americas, and speaking of which, for time concerns, we have to move on into Europe because we have to cover the war in Ukraine and everything that's been going on here today, which has been very significant to say the least. For one, we were able to see in the Sumy direction the Ukrainians were taking out some Russian forces here in the 105th Territorial Defense Forces. In particular, they were taking out the escorts of the stretcher bearers here.
Damn, that's wild. No ambulance, no ATV or anything?
No ambulance, no ATVs. It's just some
Damn.
guys with a stretcher, and they're now taking out the escorts. Oh, one guy actually ran out from there.
Do you remember that thing that they used to have? Is that thing that like bucked off the mannequin? Like, you know what I'm talking about? Like threw the mannequin off. Was that a horse or something?
Yeah, it was. I think it was a horse. Yeah, or a mule or something like that.
Yeah, I remember the Russians were testing some really rinky-dink system for transporting the wounded, and they would like threw the guy off the stretcher, the horse was carrying it, and they like tossed him and stuff, and it was a whole scene.
Man, it was crazy. Honestly, I remember that, man. Like, if that was a real person, they would have got their neck broke just from, like, the centrifugal force of the horse flinging them around.
Honestly.
You now see them on their way, but they did take out a couple of the escorts in that group. Moving on from that and into our location unknowns, we also get to see a Max Pro. This was actually just pretty cool just to see a Max Pro in the wild in Ukraine with a cope cage on it, but pretty neat. I just wanted to show the pictures of it. It was kind of cool. So, moving on from that, we also got to see the Russian casualty report for the day, and it was bad, for the Russians at least. We were able to hear that Miss DC, Keeper of the Record, said troop losses are average, staying above 1,000. Huge increase in APC losses, plus 8 tanks, and it was one hell of a good day today. We were able to see that 1,130 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, a fairly large number, especially in the modern day, along with 37 APCs, 134 supply trucks, 8 main battle tanks, 23 artillery pieces, and 235 drones. It was a very significant day in losses for the Russian Federation, and the front line certainly reflected that. We did get to see the Russians getting slammed up in the Kupiansk direction, and this clip right here. The Russians are right down there near that red circle, just in case you didn't know, and the Ukrainians are slamming them with artillery. That's a lot of artillery right there.
That's a lot. Look at that. I mean, that's a lot.
Man, that's a lot as I hear you typing on that keyboard. Like, man, you said that's a lot. Yeah, like just for a second at the end of that, like your microphone, I think, was just on because you were talking, and so it picked it up there for a second. But still, the strikes do appear quite significant here. Oh, man, while we're watching this clip, someone said, people have been saying over and over how tariffs will kill us. Never happens. Worked before, will work again. I don't know if you know this, but the tariffs have never actually gone into effect. They've always been reversed because of just the sheer damage that they did to the stock market from just hearing that they were coming. So they never have worked because they've never gone into actual practice. But we can see them continuing to strike the Russians. And also, if you don't know, just to add this in as a little bit of a fun fact, The reason why the Great Depression got so bad, and this is actually something some people may not know, but back when Herbert Hoover was president and the Great Depression happened in 1929, Herbert Hoover had the great idea of implementing significant tariffs on all foreign trade, which didn't help the Great Depression. It made it even worse because there wasn't even a foreign market at that point that people were able to sell to. So, just to put that out there, maybe not the best idea. Like generally tariffs in the past haven't really done too well, and I could pull up plenty of historical examples where tariffs were used, like in the Panic of 1893 and the Great Depression, and they generally don't really work too well. But anyways, moving on from that and on further down the line and into the area of Yablonivka, we also got to see the Russians getting hit down here by the Rubish. Take a look at this.
Oh,
Oh! Oh, look, this guy is giving a little interview, looking back at the computer screens, taking his glasses off. He's looking shocked. And I'd have to say that I'd be shocked as well. Oh my goodness,
what
is that a
the
Russian?
hell? What the hell kind of drone is he carrying? What the? What's he rolling that thing around for like a wheelbarrow?
Man, honestly, I don't even know how he's carrying that thing. That thing looks unwieldy.
Look at this guy in this shady room right here looking at this. Is that the drone that did he get it?
I guess. I don't know. But moving on from that clip, which was kind of a little confusing, we also get to see the Russians getting slammed by the 16th Artillery Brigade near Pokrovsk. Pokrovsk, of course, has been the most active battlefield recently, but I'm about to show y'all why that's going to start. It's going to start dying down a little bit over the next month or two. But you see them slamming them. The 16th Brigade is highly effective.
Oh,
that looks like a destroyed position right there. But here is why we're not going to be seeing this a lot from here on. The Rasputitsa is finally here. The rains came through, and it's turned the ground into an absolute slush. Here's a look at what it looks like right now in some places around Pokrovsk. So y'all can clearly tell there's going to be a large cessation in frontline actions until the Rasputitsa subsides in late November and early December. I mean, that is bad. That is insanely bad.
That's real bad right there. That's muddy. That's slushy right there. That's the slushy special there.
Man, that's that big gulp, double slushy right there. That's a tough one. And we also get to see the 55th Brigade still at work, taking out drones in the area.
Oh, look, one of those cheap ones.
Man, it's that extra cheap. Man, it's so cheap. People look at it and go, man, that thing's from Dollar General.
Man, that looks like it's from the dollar store.
Oh, bro, they got two drones going. Oh, my God, they got it.
Oh, dang. That thing exploded like it was made of paper mache, like it is.
Man, you said like paper mache. I was going to be like, man, it is paper mache. It's cardboard. And there are a lot of these things being used around Pokrovsk. Russian drones went from looking garbage but somewhat made to now they're just straight garbage and look like a homemade drone that a kid would make.
They're so junky.
They're so cheap for the strongest army on the planet, or the second strongest, like the Russians used to say. We also got to see them targeting Russian forces in this clip here from the 68th Jaeger Brigade.
Also, very interesting demographic data here in this poll right here. Very fascinating. I insulted every category except for middle-aged, business and career, and retired and stable. Young and older caught strays. Look at this thing right here. 4. They're going to hee-ho. I don't know what this is.
Yeah, man, but anyways, they did get him. They did get him in the 68th. Moving on down the line into Velika Novosilka, we also get to see the 110th targeting and taking out Russian forces, and including a battalion commander in this attack right here in this clip.
Also, someone in the chat said a minute ago, where's retired and unstable? I'm not sure how you can be retired and unstable. Is that even possible? Like, because you can't, if you're unstable, how can you retire? Because to retire, you have to have a lot of savings to retire. So I don't know.
Some people in the chat were actually saying that a little while ago. They were like, I'm not working, I'm old, and I'm, living nearly paycheck to paycheck from Social Security. And I'm like, ugh, that is a tough position to be in. I'm so sorry for the folks who are in that spot. Also, by the way, we're about to watch an amazing clip of battlefield footage. This happened near Velika Novosilka. The Russians assaulted the Ukrainian position and took several of them prisoner. What we're about to watch is the Ukrainian forces that then counterattacked, wiped out the Russian force, liberated the Ukrainian prisoners that were just taken, and then returned back to their line. This was actually a wild clip to watch, so here it is. Well, you see here the Russians running into their trench while the Ukrainians are advancing on them. We can now see the Ukrainian prisoners and the other Ukrainian counterattacking forces that are now targeting them as the Russians move through. We can now see one of the Ukrainian prisoners here being taken away.
Also, y'all, didn't mean mentally unstable. When I said like retired and unstable, I meant like economically. I think some people took that as mentally unstable. I didn't mean it that way.
No, we didn't mean it that way at all. But we can see here the Ukrainians running on in. And another one.
Retired and crazy. I wouldn't say retired and crazy.
Man.
Man,
let 1,000 blossoms
retired and nuts.
Let 1,000 blossoms bloom. But I'm not going to spend another minute on it because there's another man being eaten by a crocodile in the outback. Oh, man. And we can see the Ukrainians here counterattacking to liberate their comrades who have been taken prisoner.
I mean, let 1,000 blossoms bloom for all I care. People are entitled to their proclivities. But I won't spend another minute on it because down there in Ukraine, another Russian's getting blown apart by a drone.
Do you know something? Do you know something? If the damn Russian Federation finds out about those videos that we posted on the damn internet, they're going to condemn our channel, and we're going to have to move out of it. But beyond that, they are getting slammed down here. The Ukrainians are giving them the full 9 yards to get their guys out of here.
Oh dear. The Russians are going to open a pull apart the way they're pulling apart. I need to get the cricket soundboard. Hold on.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man. Like, actually, that was a pretty good one, but I was focused so much on the clip, I forgot to be like, that's a pretty good one. And I was like, damn it, bro, I didn't want to leave you hanging like that. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. But still, the 141st Brigade did an amazing job down there near Velika Novosilka, and we also get to see down near Blohi some anti-drone warfare going on. But I'm sure y'all have seen enough of these clips of them taking out the drones. They do this everywhere. Pretty much the whole war is a drone war at this point. And they're coming on down. They're about to get it. Oh, and they got it. Holy moly, they got him. That's crazy, folks. Crazy right there. So, we're going to be moving on now from that clip. We're going to cut it off a little early. And we're now going to head up to Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky. Because, folks, it's kind of crazy. I mean, we are running overtime tonight with this news. There's been so much of it. We've been talking about so much of it. I mean, hell, we got to make sure to get to the speech. So, without further ado, folks, here's the speech. Speech!
Шановні українці, українки, зараз же фіналізували
Hold up, folks. I gotta get that.
підготовку до зустрічі з європейськими партнерами. Важливі заходи далі по тижню. Перше, буде хороша і багато в чому абсолютно нова угода щодо наших оборонних спроможностей. Угода, яку ми будемо реалізовувати фактично як частину гарантій безпеки для нашої держави, для всіх наших людей. Довгостроково. Зараз деталі ще зарано називати, все буде на тижні. Друге, ми чітко на одній сторінці з нашими партнерами щодо дипломатії. Я вдячний кожному за підтримку, за принципову позицію всім країнам, всім лідерам. Україна знов-таки висловила готовність, свою готовність закінчити війну. Ми провели зустріч з президентом Сполучених Штатів Америки. Ми домовилися, що саме так спробуємо організувати діалог на лінії, яка є зараз. Саме таким був сигнал президента Трампа, його команді. Це було і публічно. лінія фронту може бути початком дипломатії. Натомість Росія знову робить все, щоб зіскочити з дипломатії. І як тільки питання далекобійності для нас, для України стало трохи далі, то майже автоматично Росія стала вже менш зацікавленою у дипломатії. Це сигнал, що саме це питання далекобійності дає, можливо, незамінний ключ до миру. Чим більше української далекобійності, тим більше і російська готовність закінчити війну. Зараз тижні, які це знову підтвердили, дискусія про томагавки виявилась сильною інвестицією в дипломатію. Ми змусили Росію показати, що томагавки – це саме та карта, на яку вони зважають. Будемо говорити з європейцями, з американцями щодо далекобійності. Пріоритет – ППО, безумовно. Були на доповідях сьогодні секретар РНБО Умєров та міністр закордонних справ України Сибіга. Ми детально поговорили, що треба з кожним партнером зараз пропрацювати, щоб отримати необхідні системи ППО та ракети до них. Також триває підготовка контракту з американцями щодо достатньої для нас кількості систем Patriot. І на ближчу перспективу і більш тривало. Я доручив активізувати цей напрямок. Звісно, сьогодні від ранку багато дуже доповідей щодо відновлення в регіонах після російських ударів по нашій енергетиці. Особливо складна ситуація Чернігівщина, Сумщина, Харківщина та в прифронтових громадах росіяни здійснюють методично, найбільшу у світі за масштабом кампанію терору проти нашої енергетики, проти нашого життя. Я дякую всім у світі, хто нам допомагає, хто не мовчить про те, що відбувається. Щойно я говорив з прем'єр-міністром Іспанії Педро Санчесом про наші енергетичні потреби, про те, що треба для відновлення. Я вдячний за готовність допомогти. Ми домовились і про зустріч, і про нові кроки на підтримку нашої держави, підтримку українців і нашої спільної безпеки в Європі. Я дякую тобі, пане прем'єр-міністре, ще раз за енергетичний пакет. Будуть іще інші зустрічі, інші перемовини. Ми будемо наполягати, що Росія не повинна відчувати навіть відсотка безкарності. 19-й пакет санкцій потрібен. Достатня підтримка нашого захисту потрібна. Також потрібне принципове рішення щодо російських активів. Використання активів Росії заради захисту від Росії. Ми розраховуємо на результати. Слава Україні!
And the Heroes Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine here on day 1336 of the news from around the world. And that's going to be moving us on into the second segment of this stream where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And boy, howdy, folks, is it a fun time. First, I do have to say a big thanks and a huge shout out to all 80,000 people who have watched this stream so far. That is a very large number of people to watch a live stream on YouTube. And not only that, we reached a peak viewership tonight of 16.3 thousand people. I want to thank all 16.3 thousand of y'all who were here live tonight at the peak, and the 11.7 thousand people who are live right now, and the 80,000 people who have watched this stream over the whole length of it for watching. I hope that y'all have enjoyed this stream and found it to be of high quality and sound construction with how we put the news together and delivered it to all of y'all today, and I hope that y'all found our analysis and information to be of sound quality. Of course, we're about to be moving on into the question segment, and that's where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all, all the folks who threw in super chats, and hopefully as many live chats as we can get to. But before we get to that, I've just got to say a massive thanks and a huge appreciation to all of y'all once again. And before we get on into those questions, or even this poll that Matthew had just a moment ago, we have actually gotten breaking news from the White House, and not of a foreign policy development. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so we do have some breaking news right now. This is typically not something we cover, but it looks to be pretty interesting right here. Not very clear what this was all about, but we have heard from U.S. Secret Service, according to open source intel on Twitter, that at approximately 10:37 p.m. tonight, which was just about 40 minutes ago, an individual drove a vehicle into the Secret Service vehicle gate located at 17th and East Street in Washington, D.C., apparently near the White House, and the individual was arrested and the vehicle was assessed and deemed safe. and they're currently investigating what caused this. So it looks like a vehicle rammed into an exterior gate that was leading close to the White House or to the White House, one or the other. But I'm looking at a picture of it right now. And also, by the way, don't show the photo on the air, just as a reference, by the way. But it looks to be a normal vehicle. There doesn't appear to be anything unusual about it. So it could have been maybe just an accident, perhaps. But it looks like it might have rammed into the guard shack, actually, instead of the actual barricades that pop up from the road. So kind of interesting with that. We'll have to wait and see what they say. But yeah, a car apparently just rammed into the checkpoint there.
That's a pretty wild sort of a thing. Unfortunately, folks, we can't show the picture. It's got a giant thing on it that makes it to where we can't show it. But beyond that, it is a very interesting development. And so far, the guy hasn't been found. I actually thought when Matthew first broke the news in the live chat, at least, that some other crazy dude was about to start running into the White House. Remember that one guy, man, that actually jumped the fence, ran all the way into the White House's front door, and then ran around and like downstairs into the kitchen and everything before they rounded him up and grabbed him?
Yeah, I remember that. There's been some bad breaches over the last few years, especially during the last administration. There was a couple of breaches, and then there were some before that as well. So yeah, there's been some bad slip-ups. I think they've generally fixed most of it. Hopefully.
Yeah, that's hopefully they don't have something like that happening right now. That would be wild. And also, folks, I hate to tell you all this, but the East Wing is being demolished right now, from what I understand. A lot of pictures came out today showing that the entire East Wing facade had been ripped off, and it now looks like, from pictures later on the day, they've gotten to demolishing a good part of the East Wing, which has been around for a hot minute. I think a little bit over 130, 140 years or so. So, very unfortunate thing with that. I generally had heard that apparently there was going to be no altercations to the original structure, but it actually appears that they're just demolishing an entire wing of the original structure. So, for historical purposes, that's not really too great. But anyways, with that, folks, it is time for us. Someone said, growing up, I always thought the White House was impenetrable. Yeah, you would generally think that, but crazily enough, there's been a lot of lunatics that actually just run right through the security perimeter, and they make it kind of far before people get them. Usually, they're caught almost right on the spot. Some of them just run almost right through, breezing through the building and everything. And that's happened several times, actually. Sometimes they make it through a blind spot that the Secret Service has at that very moment in that one spot, and they make it all the way in. Really, really nuts. Honestly, when you think about it, the safety at the White House, although they have great security, it's really a questionable sort of a deal. It's almost like a hit and a miss sometimes. Luckily, nothing bad's ever happened as a result of that. But at the same time, honestly, folks, if I was the president, I would never feel 100% secure at the White House due to the fact people sometimes just run straight in, to the kitchen and all. But anyways.
They've got better security now than that. So thankfully, the security has probably been tightened up because they learned from all those breaches, or at least they're supposed to learn from all those breaches how to beef up the security. So I think they've probably beefed it up. I would assume that. Also, by the way, if you haven't been to DC in a while, they have backed the barricades up to the White House. They keep backing them up. More streets keep getting closed off near the White House where you can't even drive down some streets you used to be able to drive down. Look at this. They keep backing the barriers up. I know this is a temporary barrier for some type of event or something, but they keep adding more fences. They keep pushing it back. So they're adding some more layers for sure.
Anything recent from around here? Why are all of them from the late 2010s? Also, man, by the way, when we were here, you used to be able to walk right up to the actual fence right here.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, remember because, we were there at night and there was roaches crawling around on that little rock, palisade down there.
Yeah, I think so. Those were those roaches that had the cameras in them.
Yeah, the camera roaches. And then there's also, oh man, they removed the beehive. Do you remember that beehive on this tree that literally had a giant camera sticking out of the hole? You remember that?
Yeah, the totally not a surveillance camera beehive. There's just they would let a beehive exist on the White House lawn. It's obviously if there was a beehive, they would knock it down and spray it with a raid. They wouldn't just let a beehive grow right in the middle of the White House lawn. That was the goofiest thing ever.
Also, folks, it wasn't even a real looking beehive. It was like a cartoon looking let me go pull it up for y'all. A card? Yeah, it was literally like this. Like, it looked just like that. And in the giant hole, there was a literal camera lens. Like, it actually reflected light off of it and everything. We're like, oh my god, look, there's a camera in there. And it was so stupid. Like, anyone would ever believe that this is a real beehive.
Yeah, they're trying to lure in Xi Jinping for the trade talks. They're putting beehives in the front. Here, you want some honey?
Like, this is what a real beehive looks like out in the wild, in case y'all ever wondered. You know, that's what they naturally look like. So, seeing a beehive like that hanging off of a tree, like, it just raised a lot of questions. And then seeing the camera lens, and I was like, oh my god, that is so lame. Like anyone would look at... Well, honestly, though, there's a lot of people who actually don't know what real beehives look like, so that might fool a lot of people, but it didn't fool me. I was like, that is just a camera, like, in a fake beehive. And also, let's see here. Oh, what the hell? You can actually go... Why? When in the world did Google get to do this? What the hell?
Let's see, this was back in
2016. Yeah.
2016. Oh, this was a long time ago. This was right during the current leader's first term, actually.
The
They have a
leader.
playhouse. I don't recall that over there.
Yeah, they have a playground, you know, just in case the president's got to blow off some steam, you know, he gets on the swing or goes on the slide. You know, a lot of them do that, you know, like, let's see here, and then you pull up to here. I'll be honest with y'all. The White House is big, but it isn't really that big, you know? It's kind of like a country club, almost, like, in terms of the size.
Well, it's really what's underground. I mean, it's larger than it looks because it's got basements and stuff like that to it, so it's really larger than it looks.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, and it also has the East Wing, and, well, no longer the East Wing, it's just the West Wing, really. So, I mean, yeah, it is a little bit bigger. And also, here's the Oval Office. Oh, they don't have pictures of it. That's kind of lame. Like, you know, but the Oval Office is actually right here, folks. It's not in this little circular part of the actual executive mansion that's right here. It's actually over here in the West Wing, in this little spot right here. I forgot
Where
why
are they going to hold the WWE SmackDown or the what? No, it's not. It's UFC cage match or something like that. They're going to hold it right there where your mouse cursor is. I think actually, I think they're going to set the cage up there and put some mega lights or something, some stadium lights. It's going to be like a whole thing. They have like I think they're planning on having the UFC fighters walk out of the White House to the cage on the lawn. I think.
Yeah, I mean, they could. Honestly, that's dumb. That is so dumb. Like, I can't, like, I
Seems
got
odd.
it. Huh?
It certainly seems odd.
I just got to be honest with y'all. I don't really like cheapening up the whole executive like that. You know, like that's a really cheap thing in my opinion to bring the WWE. I mean, you know, like the whole
That's not
choreographed.
the WWE. I think it's the UFC.
Oh, the UFC. I thought it was the WWE for some reason, but you know, bringing the UFC to the White House, like, you know, what are we going to do? Have President Machacho go shoot an M60 in the air from Idiocracy now too? I mean, like, where does this go on? Like, where does this end? Like, I gotta be honest with y'all. I know there's always a push, at least in the political world, to always look hip to your voter base. But I feel like it's getting too far at this point. You know, I feel like both sides are really pushing way too far to look hip and cool. Like, this is going way overboard, and I don't know. Like, if they want to have it in Washington, I mean, they could have it in the Ellipse in like a public park, which is like close enough to the White House, but not in the White House's south lawn. Like, that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But anyways. With that, also, Monster Lab said the section of the White House being destroyed was built around 1902. Yeah, it is fairly old. It's not as old as the original structure, and the original structure isn't even really that old because I don't know if y'all know this, but the whole inside of the White House isn't even original. It was all redone in the 1950s. So all of the quote-unquote historic rooms, like this one, it's not real. Like, some of the paneling, like the paneling on the walls and stuff, it actually is original from the reconstruction that was done in the 1810s, but everything else about the inside of the building was completely gutted and redone. I can show you that. It was done during the Eisenhower period, but let's see, Eisenhower White House renovation. Let me show you what the inside was. This was the inside of the White House for a little while. It literally had been gutted completely, and they rebuilt the whole thing from the inside. It's really crazy sort of a process. They also had to knock a hole in the wall down near the basement level, so that way the dump trucks could drive in and out while they were refurbishing this whole thing, and also adding a basement to it. So a little bit crazy that really the interior, like this right here, isn't exactly original any longer. It's really from the 1950s when it was rebuilt then. But the exterior superstructure, the actual walls of the White House, those were the original ones from 1802 when it was first opened as the Executive Mansion. Also, by the way, this is the reason why this building is called the Eisenhower Executive Office Building, is because when they were refurbishing the White House, all of the White House's functions were just moved over right over here to the Executive Office Building, and then they just ran it out of there until the White House was done being refurbished. So, pretty cool little deal.
I think the only way that me personally, just as a person, just as a citizen of the United States, the only way I could see justifying a UFC event on the White House lawn, because it seems like it should benefit the taxpayer somehow, instead of like a private show for the leaders. If they brought, like, for example, and obviously they'd have to agree. I'm not saying to like involuntarily put the politicians in a cage and let them fight, but if the politicians wanted to brawl it out, like, and be the fighters on the UFC card, that would be interesting. Like, for example, if the people that are currently like at odds with one another in Congress, if they wanted to sign up for the UFC event and, like, you know, go in there and settle their differences or something in the UFC cage, now that might be something that's in the public interest, possibly. But then again, we're not like ancient Rome or something like that. We're not trying to be like, you know, gladiators and stuff like that. So I just don't think a UFC fight on the lawn is a good idea, honestly. I don't mind UFC fights, but probably not on the lawn. Probably just in a normal venue would probably work just fine.
You know, like, I just gotta say, folks, like, I got nothing against sports or like the UFC or the WWE or anything like that, but having it in the south lawn of the White House is what I have a problem with, because at that point, you know, we're pretty much going like honestly, that's hitting such a low. Like the time that Andrew Jackson became president, and they had that whole party in the White House where people were like busting out windows because they were getting that dog drunk. I feel like that's almost getting back to that point. Like, why in the world would we do that? That really didn't look that good back then. It's remembered for not looking that good, and it doesn't really look good now. So why are we doing something even close to that again? And bringing UFC fighters to the White House, you know, like, once again, if they want to do it in Washington, I don't have a problem with that. They could do it on the National Mall or the Ellipse or around the Washington Monument and between the area of the World War II Memorial and the Monument. They could do it there. I mean, that's a public area, so, you know, they could just fill out the right permits and have it there. But having it on the very south lawn of the White House within the secured area, I don't know about that. That's something I wouldn't do. Anyways.
I wonder if what happened to that Zuck and Muck Musk Zuck and
Muck. Oh my god.
Not Zuck and Muck, but what happened to that Zuck and what the hell's his name? Musk. That's what I'm trying to say. What happened to that whole thing? You remember they were gonna fight it out, like, or something. They were gonna do like a jujitsu match or something. But then all of a sudden, like, they chickened out and stuff. It's like, what happened to that? I mean, they could have been the main card at this event right here.
Yeah, I mean, they could have. I think they backed out because neither one of them wanted to actually get hurt, because they were probably scared of getting hurt, I would assume. So that's what I'm thinking, really.
Man, that Zuck and Muck card, I've been trying to, like, get tickets to that Zuck and Muck for a long time. When they gonna do the jujitsu? I mean, come on.
Man, that sounded like some sort of like fantasy like lore bit. Zuck and Muck, the founders of such and such. Like, honestly. But also, I saw someone say this. I gotta say this as a counter. Someone said, "Well, this administration is for real men," and I don't really get that, because I just gotta say this: there have been a lot of real men who have been in the White House. Practically all of them, really, you know, when you think about all of history, and nobody ever had a UFC fight in the south lawn of the White House, you know, and there are a lot of contenders for real men, you know, Lincoln, Teddy Roosevelt, you know, so on and so forth. There's a lot of them, and I never heard of any of them having a UFC fight in the south lawn, and that's what made them a real man. I think what made them real men was their ability to have some reason and some depth and actually lead the country with grace, and good decisions and judgment, more so than the publicity stunts that they pull off. I think that's where a lot of people get amiss these days, because it doesn't really matter if your little guy or your party, they go and sit in a bar and have a beer with a whole bunch of blue-collar looking white dudes to make themselves look a little bit more popular, or, you know, they have a UFC fight on the South Lawn, or they, you know, tell everyone to Pokemon go to the polls. I don't know why people sit there and think that that's what makes or breaks someone, really, these days. What makes or breaks someone is their ability to lead. this position is nothing that's supposed to be exciting or interesting to the public. This is something that affects 360 million people. It's simply a job. This is the most important paper pusher in the country in the executive branch. That's basically what it is. And so I don't really know why people are trying to act like it's supposed to be exciting or it's supposed to be ultra macho or super wimpy. None of that matters. It all matters about the execution of the job, and that's it alone. I believe more so in the government being a function over form sort of a system than what a lot of people emphasize these days, which is a form over function, which is where I think the error comes in, where a lot of people have a problem with the modern political atmosphere on both ends, is because it's more of a form over function. They care more about how they look instead of how things turn out. But anyways, with that, I hope that addresses that the best I can, at least in my opinion. But moving on from that, it is time for us to get to the poll. And Matthew, what did that poll say about our audience?
All right. So the poll said, "What are you?" A very interesting question there. Very, very vague. But 34% said middle-aged in business and career, while 27% said retired and stable, and 22% said older and confused. Just joking. And 17% said young, naive, and just starting. And actually, I'm in the young, naive, and just starting category. I'm in the 17% right there because I'm 25 years old, and the enforcer is a year or two younger than me, about a year and a half actually. So we're both in that category actually. Hopefully less naive than we think. But it looks like the most people said middle-aged in business and career, which is actually quite interesting because I thought most of our audience was retired for the most part. But it looks like most people are actually at the height of their career or either in the midst of it, one or the other. So very fascinating with that. So that means a lot of our chat actually really sympathize with the whole tariff situation, most likely. But Enforcer, what say you?
That's actually quite interesting because the whole tariff deal was actually fairly contentious in the chat because, like everything these days, it seems like almost every topic is becoming political somehow. But I can tell y'all, if you don't believe me, that's fine. You don't have to believe me. You don't have to agree with me. This isn't going to turn out well for you in particular. For anyone who's supporting this, or anyone who's not supporting it, it's not going to turn out well for you. If you don't believe me, that's fine. The proof will literally prove itself in a couple of months, and much to many of y'all's dismay and misfortune, but that's what we're looking at the moment. So, very interesting to see that a lot of people are agreeing with us about the whole tariff deal, but also, folks, I gotta say this as well for some people who like to shout the whole political rule at us. We do deem here on the channel the Enforcer and Enforcer Mad, what is political and not political. The tariff thing isn't even political. That's simply foreign policy and economic fact that tariffs are usually destructive. If you don't know how tariffs work, that's fine. But at the same time, don't act like we're wrong because you don't know how they work. Like a tariff is paid by the importer, not by the importee. That's just always how it's worked. You can literally look through all the history at how tariffs work and their function to see that very fact. So, if you don't agree with me, that's fine. You'll be broke in a couple of months anyway. So, it's going to be a tough time for you. I mean, like, I'm not saying that like you deserve to be broke, but you're going to be broke and you're going to find out anyways. And I'm generally trying to tell you it's not a good idea. So that way you can kind of wise up against it and say, this isn't really that great of an idea, and maybe give enough pushback that this will be backed off of before you go broke. Because I don't really like the idea of Americans going broke and being in great situations of dismay because of their poor decisions. I generally like to tell people to wise up a little bit. This isn't a good move, and not only are you selling yourself down the creek, but pretty much everyone else if you support this whole deal.
I don't know. I think people just better just strap in and just figure out a way to sort of work around it because I'm not sure. I'm not sure if this is going to change, no matter if people speak out against it or not. I'm not sure if it's going to change. So might just have to hunker down and hope for the best.
Yeah, like, that's honestly true, but at the same time, it's nice, it's at least nice to think to a degree that telling folks about it and having people kind of on the same page so this isn't really going to be that good of an ordeal. At least it would help for people to be informed about what's going to be coming around. And also I see someone saying, this is one, folks, that's just killing me. Someone said, just buy American and you won't pay tariffs. There's not an option to always buy American. I don't know if you know that. And there isn't going to be an option to buy American because all the companies that buy their goods from China, because China only produces those goods because they have the cheap enough labor and they have the factories to do it, those goods are just going to cease to exist. Or they're going to become insanely expensive. I don't think that's what you know. When people say that, I don't mean to say this offensively, but when people say that, I already know you don't know how the whole logistical and economic system works, especially how it works in the modern day. It's not like flipping a switch. If it was that easy, someone would have already done it. A lot of people who think that something is really easy and really simple think it's simple and easy because they've never been involved in it, or they've never looked into it or researched it a lot. If you could just flip a switch and have everyone buy American, don't you think someone else would have done that? Don't you think the same president, when he was president in 2016 to 2020, would have done that? You can't. Like, it's not something that you can feasibly do. It's just economically infeasible. And then some people say, well, use the tariff money to support these businesses and give them money so that way they can build these factories in America. Well, the problem is what a lot of people aren't getting. There is no tariffs because nobody's going to be buying from China anymore to have a tariff excise to make any money off of it to even fund these businesses with. That's not happening either. So you're up the creek without a paddle at that point. Your only option is to either keep the tariffs up and take significant economic damage in every single economic sector, or to just completely drop the tariff and then try and negotiate with the Chinese. Because I'll be honest with y'all, the Chinese on this one, I'm pro-American all the way here, but the Chinese on this one do have us by the balls. If this is our response to the rare earths trade war that they're currently conducting, one, we don't really have the processing abilities in America for the rare earth metals, so they got us by the balls there. And then also trying to retaliate against them with these 155% tariffs, they're also getting us by the balls again, because while that will damage them, it's also going to damage us equally. And generally, taking out your enemy while also taking yourself out at the same time isn't really the way that you fight war of any type, whether it's a real war or a trade war. Because, if you're dead and at the same time your enemy's dead, what kind of victory is that? That's not even a victory.
Honestly, I think the people at this point, I think people better just, well, you could be like Matt. Matt only eats one meal a day. I'm speaking to myself in the third person. I could be young and unstable, actually. But at the same time, though, I really do only eat one meal a day. It's not because I can't afford to eat 3 meals a day, but I just eat one meal a day anyway. But hopefully people don't have to get to that point. Like, hopefully if people want to eat properly, unlike me, they can still, like, afford to eat the 3 meals a day. But unfortunately, though, when people's times start getting rough, it starts affecting your quality of life a lot. Like, for example, some people have to sell things. Some people have to start cutting back on how they're eating and things like that. So, and also, by the way, some people are saying that doesn't sound healthy, Matt. Actually, I'm in actually great health. I have my blood pressure is perfectly fine. All my health stats are fine. So I think just because I'm young, probably my health stats just stay good. So yeah, 1 meal a day, honestly. And supper, I go crazy at supper time. I tell you what, I'm just going nuts. That Costco chicken doesn't stand a chance at supper time. It's finished. But anyways, with that, folks, enough rambling from me. It is now time to jump back to our super chat questions proper and get those right now. So, jumping into our first one here, this one goes to Mike Barnes, and he puts in a massive $100 support. And thank you very much, Mike, for that very generous support right there. That is the second biggest one of the night. And Mike said, the best and most non-biased information.
Hey, and thank you so much for the massive support and enjoying the unbiased information. We try and be as unbiased as possible, and I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because we just like to look at the raw analysis and speak about what the analysis is saying. So a huge thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, everybody's saying Costco chicken. Ooh, what the hell? Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Listen, it's $5 for a chicken. I mean, you cannot beat that. I mean, and it's good chicken. It's good chicken, seasoned really good and stuff like that. I mean, personally, I like it. Me personally, but it tastes is taste, so I guess it's subjective. But anyways, jumping into our next one. This one goes to Bobby43, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Bobby, for that generous support as well. And it's good to see you once again, also known as LC39A. And he said, hi.
And hello, LC39A, aka Bobby43, and I gotta thank you incredibly for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is great to have you here tonight. And of course, hello, oh hello there. But still, a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one. But a humongous thanks to you so much once again, Bobby43, and it is great to have you here.
Indeed. Good to see Bobby once again. And thank you very much, Bobby, once again. And we also have a 50 that came in from Danny B. It's Chef Danny. And he puts in a $50 support. And thank you very much, Danny, for that support as well. And Danny said, "Good evening, enforcers. Chef Danny here. And 40 years old, 2 kids, own my own catering business, but still work at a restaurant. And there's a reason why I never left the restaurant. I still need an income just in case, an LLT LLC." And Danny, that's a very good point right there. And in fact, obviously, I won't get into our private discussions, but me and Danny were discussing something along those lines the other day, and I totally understand where Danny's coming from because it's a huge leap, and I'm very familiar with that decision, and also the enforcers as well. It's a huge leap to jump out of something that seems like a safe category. Like, for example, we were in law school. Generally, if you go through law school and you get out, generally you can find a pretty decent job making pretty good as a lawyer. These days, it's becoming harder to do that, but it used to be somewhat easier to do that, but a little bit harder today. But it's still a little bit more safe than necessarily jumping into business for yourself. And that is a big leap. So I understand where you're coming from 100% on that. I totally understand. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I'd have to say I completely understand as well, Danny B. That is something that a lot of people always have a hard time with, and it's very understandable. Everyone has a hard time with it. Security over possibility, and that's really the sort of a battle that people fight. Should they go and do their own thing, and maybe have some sort of a possibility of success, or should they keep with security where they know that things are a set certainty? And honestly, I don't really think there's a right answer to that. It really just depends on what people calculate and figure out, and especially for folks who have a family and kids, you can't really take possibility over security, because what if the possibility doesn't come to fruition, and then you're stuck with nothing, and then you got kids to support too. That's a real bad spot to be in. So I completely get you with that, Danny B, because that is always a really tough decision to make. And is one that was actually tough for us to make, because this channel is our livelihood. It's our full-time job every day. And that was actually one that was a little bit of a hard decision to make, folks, especially when we were back in law school, because we pretty much had to get to the decision, is this channel going to die, and we're going to go to law school, which we hated, and wrap that out, or are we going to give up on law school and do this? And, generally we followed, instead of the security of getting a JD, which is a Juris Doctorate, instead of getting that, we decided that it would be a lot better to go the route of possibility, which actually ended up turning out well, because a lot of people really love this channel, and a lot of people have found it, especially since we left law school. We had 150,000 subscribers, 157 actually, when we left law school. Now we have 515,000. Man, yesterday, it was a mudflat. Now it is a thriving city. Tomorrow it'll be a metropolis. And hopefully,
I'll tell you what, citing, what is that, Lee Kuan Yew?
yeah, Lee Kuan Yew. Man, honestly though, that guy had a knack for rambling, man, like about the Singapore Airlines and all. I was like, damn. I was like, this guy goes on. But whoever governs Singapore, they must have that iron in them. And then they were talking about the seating rates. And I was like, what? I was like, he just dropped this baller quote in the middle of this whole airline seating fee discussion with the public. I'm like, what the hell?
Honestly though, like, I will say this, Danny, like, I'm not telling you like which decision to make, because it's not guaranteed. Like, when you jump into business for yourself, it's going to work. I will say this though, Danny, like, it seems like your catering business is fantastic, by the way. Like, Danny has showed me the food that he cooks for his business, and also for the restaurant too, I believe. And it's top notch. Like, we don't really have a whole bunch of restaurants like that where we live in Alabama. So it's top notch. So to me, it seems like it would do good, but in this economy, you never can tell. Sometimes people don't have a lot of disposable income to spend on things like that. But I don't know, like, it seems like it looks good to me. But that's still a big leap though, because like, even in what we did, like, me personally, I would not, if I had to go back and make the same decision again to leave law school and do this channel full time and go full scale into this, or to stay in law school and keep on that path while I was miserable, I would 100% make the same decision again to go and work for myself, or at least work here with the enforcer on the channel as partners. I would definitely do that again, because I was not happy in the other thing. So even though it's not as stable as being a lawyer, I would much rather be doing this. This is truly what I enjoy doing, unlike what I was doing at law school.
I'm gonna have to say, if I had the choice, I would have never gone into law school in the first place, actually. I would have just completely avoided it. There's honestly, just to speak on my own personal experience, some people might have enjoyed law school, but I actually absolutely hated law school. I didn't really like a lot of the people who were in it. I didn't really like the whole atmosphere, and I didn't really like the law school itself. No disrespect to anyone who may have known us at law school or been a professor there or anything that knew us, but I just didn't like it at all. I didn't like any of it, and I also didn't like how they dealt with the issues we were having. Because there was actually this whole thing that happened back then. Not some of y'all are familiar with the story, but basically there was this guy who was doxing us, and his community actually had a plan to say that we were going to do something wildly dangerous in a school setting. I'm sure many of y'all know what that is. And they were going to get us swatted in the middle of law school one day. So crazily enough, someone flipped and they tipped us off on that. So I went to the police department on the campus, and they actually told me that they had been loaded with calls that morning, no joke, saying that very thing. All of them from outside the country. So nobody could actually be prosecuted anywhere in America at a federal level or a state level for issuing false reports because they had planned the whole thing out and everyone was calling from countries like Canada and elsewhere. So luckily I got on top of that, or we probably would have been swatted that day in the middle of law school, which, who knows how that could have turned out. That could have turned out really badly. And so we dealt with that, and I was gone from the classes all day long when that happened, like trying to deal with it, filing a police report, having that specific person trespass from the campus, all that, so on and so forth. So I get back to the class, and someone asked me where I was all day, because they were like, you were here in the morning, where did you go? And so I said, oh, I had to deal with this thing, and I kind of explained it a little bit of what was happening. So that afternoon, no joke, folks, that afternoon, I got an email from the vice dean of this law school telling me there's an emergency. I need to see you tomorrow morning. I thought it had to do with the whole getting doxxed and almost swatted thing. I show up there the next morning in this office, and they threaten me that if I say anything else to anyone about that, they're going to take action against me. I sat there and said, so wait a minute, you're not going to help us with what is happening? Like, with the threat that we just got that we're having to deal with? You're going to threaten me because I sat there and told someone who asked about it? And they said, yep. And I was like, all right, I don't like this at all anymore. I was like, I don't like the whole law school atmosphere. This is a really stupid and ass-backwards way to think. And I already was getting tired of it by that point, but that was the point where I was like, to hell with this. I want out. I'm just going to go full on into YouTube. And that turned out for the better, honestly, but still, that was just absolutely stupid. Like, I've never heard anyone sit there and threaten someone, because I literally just explained to someone else what had happened and why I was gone all day, and I was going to get threatened that I told someone about that. It's like, isn't law school about following the law? You can't suppress someone for saying something that happened. Someone asks you something, so you're just barred from telling. I was like, that is just dumb. I was like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. But a massive thanks to you so much once again for support, Danny B, and helping this channel to keep on running.
Yes, indeed. And our next one here goes to Steve Blanchard. And Steve put in a $30 support. And thank you very much, good sir, for supporting the channel and helping to keep us running. And we do appreciate that. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to say a humongous thanks to you for the support. You didn't throw in a comment, but we were massively appreciative. And folks like you help this channel to keep on running and make this thing and this day on stream possible. So a huge thanks to you once again for the support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Marion Deemert, and Marion put in a 30. And thank you very much, Marion, as well, for that support right there. And Marion said, happy Tuesday, guys, and get to Utah safe.
And thank you so much for the support, and we will make sure to get to Utah safe, hopefully. It's going to be a bit of a long journey, but we've got it mapped out. The winds are set and behind our backs, so hopefully we'll get a little bit of speed going over there, and hopefully we'll make it over there really quickly, get set up, and be right back to everything like we normally are. Once again, to remind everyone, folks, we are going to be off air from the 27th, I believe, to the 31st. So that includes a Monday, but we will be back on air hopefully by the end of that week. Unfortunately, during that period, there will be no short war videos and there will be no live streams because we'll be on the road every day. But hopefully we'll be back up on air as quickly as we can and running these shows like we always do. So a huge thanks to you so much once again, and hopefully we will be safe out there on the move. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Keith Sires, who puts in a 30. And thank you very much, Keith, for that support, by the way, and we do appreciate that. And he said, thank y'all for the reports.
Hey, thank you so much for the support, and thank you for enjoying the reports. We put together these reports with a lot of passion, and a lot of research, and a lot of knowledge. And I gotta say, it's a wonderful thing, an amazing thing to know that folks like you enjoy our reports and really find them to be worth their salt. We always hope that people do find them to be worth their salt, and I gotta thank you greatly for enjoying this channel and supporting it so that way we can keep on doing these reports every day. So big thanks to you once again, and we're on to the next one.
Also, Dino said enforcers are too moral to be lawyers. Honestly, I'll be honest with you, that actually did play a part in the decision. I'll be honest, because I'm not making a statement about lawyers, by the way. I know lawyers that are still in the profession and stuff like that, so I'm not bashing lawyers as a whole. But there is an element, lawyers will call it sort of
Bending
making
the
the story
truth.
fit. Yeah, making the story fit is like the political way to say it. But the truth is, it's more along the lines of you're bending the truth to fit the reality you want people to hear. That's basically it. I personally had a personal issue with that to a certain extent. Not saying that all lawyers are liars, by the way. Like so some lawyers out there, like for example, we have trademark and patent lawyers in the chat. I just saw them in here a second ago. It's not the same thing. Like I'm speaking about like trial lawyers that go around like in criminal cases and stuff like that. I've seen it firsthand, and I didn't really care for it that much. I was like, maybe some people can like do that. Like some people have to do it. We need criminal lawyers, but I don't want to be the one personally. Me, I'd rather do something else. So that was just a personal thing on my side. But anyways, jumping into our next super chat here. This one goes to Wubba, who puts in a $25 support. And Wubba said, coffee and snacks at the Flying J in Rock Springs on Interstate 80.
Hey, and thank you so much for supporting on Interstate 80. Interstate 80. That's let's see, that's down here in Nebraska. In Nebraska, what is that called again?
It's Flying J and Rock Springs Interstate 80. That's very specific.
In Rock Springs. In Rock Springs. I guess that's in Wyoming. Let's take a look. Oh, that is near to Green River. It's near to the main line at Green River. That's pretty cool. Let's take a look down here. This has now piqued my interest. Let's see. The Flying J. What is here? A 2.7 star. Holy moly, that's pretty low rating right there. Let's take a look at the reviews. Severe unsanitary conditions and health risk. Thick layers of dust cover every surface and piece of equipment that should be kept clean. Ventilation grills are so filthy they blow dust directly into the air, triggering allergies and posing a serious danger for anyone with asthma or respiratory issues. Very bad service and workers. Only 1 star. What the hell are these pictures? Ugh.
Man, careful. Careful with these pictures. I don't know what's going on here.
2-hour wait for shower. Shower turn is too slow. Parking lot is too tight. Potholes large enough to swallow a semi-truck. With the amount of money this corporation makes, you think they'd at very least pave their lots. Absolutely ridiculous. A man with a terrible work ethic who will never come here again as a customer. I don't know what that means, actually. Like, a man with a terrible work ethic who will never come here again as a customer. Is he, like, roasting himself? Anyways, I gave it 1 star because you have to. You don't deserve anything that deserves a minus. It stinks. It reeks of smoke. I'm not a smoker. I walked in to use the restroom, walked out and reeked of smoke. Absolutely disgusting. I recommend, if you're not a smoker, stay far away from this place as possible. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie. I don't know why you pointed this thing out, but very interesting nonetheless. Oh, look, Santa Fe, Southwest. That's actually in Union Pacific territory. I don't know why they have that there. But anyways, a big thanks to you once again for the support and helping to keep this channel running. Because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible and help us to keep this thing running. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Chris Feilbach, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Chris, for that $20 support. And they said, noob question. What exactly is the LSA?
The LSA stands for the Leaf Spring Army, which is the community of the Enforcer Channel. It is a community that supports American and Western interests and takes an apolitical approach, believing that all actions should work towards the greater good of the American and Western sphere as a whole and to the benefit of the nations and the peoples who call this place their own. And that's pretty much it. So that is what the Leaf Spring Army is. There's a whole lore to it, and we also have an anthem and a flag and everything for it. It's really cool, actually. And a lot of people consider the LSA to be their thing. Put an LSA in the chat if you agree. But still, a big thanks to you once again for support. I hope that addresses your question well about what the Leaf Spring Army is. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Tripod7991, and he puts in a 20 as well. And thank you very much, Tripod, for that support. They said, hey guys, and I hope you're doing good.
Hey, we are doing good. We are doing good. I got to thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And I got to say, a big thanks to you for saying hello and hoping that we're doing well. I hope we are. Matthew, are we doing well?
We are doing well. We are doing more than well. We are doing swell.
We are doing well. And I gotta say, a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are doing quite well. So a massive thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Nicholas Vismer once again, and he puts in a $100 support, a massive support right there. And thank you very much, Nicholas. He is the third $100 support of the night, and we do appreciate that. Very generous. He said LSA is family.
Hey, an LSA is family. We're like a family, but not in a corporate way. You know, not like one of those corporate families. We're not like that. But the Leaf Spring Army, I think, is a family at this point. So many people know each other here in this chat for years, especially, that I'm sure that many of y'all consider yourselves to be very close friends and a really tight-knit community, actually. And I think that's actually a great thing. You don't really see civil communities like this across most of the internet, if not any of the internet. This channel is, I think, one of the few places that really curates a well-rounded community of people. And I gotta say that it's always a wonderful thing to know that folks like you, Nicholas, consider the Leaf Spring Army to be your home and your family. And so a huge thanks to you so much for the amazingly massive support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to WS, who puts in a $20 support, and thank you very much, WS, as well, for that generous support. And the WS said, Ruski Koot Alert. And yes, there was the coot today. They said funds for moving and coffee and lots of it. And for those secret enchiladas in the back at Costco. Oh, you remember those. That's good right there. They said plus rabbit hole topics. Enforcer Matt, GTA 6. Trains for Enforcer Andrew. Only for 5 minutes or less for real. LOL. Or Sky Ranger. Also, baby oil fund. Whoa.
Whoa, no diddy.
Whoa.
No diddy.
No diddy. No diddy. No baby oil fund, honestly. But honestly, I will say this. I will rabbit hole for approximately 20 seconds on this. I am waiting for GTA 6 to come out. I'm not convinced at this point that we will have GTA 6 before World War III. I am not convinced about that. And I think we might actually have World War III before GTA 6 at the rate that GTA 6 is taking to come out. So I hope it comes out in time for me to play it before I get sent off to war. But we'll have to wait and see. But Enforcer, what say you?
Oh, I'll give you all a rabbit hole, all right. Just a short one, though. This one will be a little tidbit fact about the steepest mainline grade that ever existed in America, and that is the Saluda grade. I gotta make it sound like crazy or something, but beyond that, the Saluda grade was a really cool mainline that existed down here in between the South Carolina-North Carolina border as a part of the main line that went from Asheville to Spartanburg. It's pretty cool. It was the steepest in America with a grade of 5%. Some people are like, that doesn't sound too bad, but in railroading terms, a 5% grade is extreme, especially for a main line. What is incredibly cool is that a little bit of it still exists, and that is Runaway Track 2. You can actually see most of the stuff that was here back then still here. Actually, you really can't from here. You could see it from the satellite. But you see the old little shed that someone used to stand in to watch all the trains coming down the grade further on up. All this is overgrown. But let me show y'all a picture of what it looked like for trains that were coming off of the grade. Let's see here. Let me get y'all a picture here. Oh, damn, they don't have any good pictures on Wikipedia. Here we go. That is steep. Look at that curve going up the hill. Right about there, That's about a 4% grade or so. Further on up the hill, out of view, it actually got up to about 4.8% to 5%. Incredibly steep. These trains had to run their brakes, and that's actually where all that smoke is coming from right here that y'all are seeing in this picture. It's actually coming from the brake shoes on the cars that are getting extremely hot from going down this hill. It was absolutely crazy, but also, nuttily enough, while it could have been one of the most dangerous main lines in America because of its grade and the fact that this could produce runaway trains, this ended up being one of the safest railroad main lines in America because Southern Railway, back in the day when they existed, they sent out a memo in the 1910s when they generally took over control of this and said, this thing is either going to get safer or we're shutting it down. So they went over the nines to make this thing as safe as they could, and it became one of the safest rail lines in all of America until it was shut down in the late 90s. But a really interesting fact about American railroading, in a sense, and something that a lot of people in the South always talk about, even with it being gone for decades now. People always still talk about the famous Saluda grade. But anyways, with that, I hope that is an interesting train rabbit hole for all of y'all right there. It's a little bit of an interesting one. But also, he said 5 minutes, man. He said 5 minutes. But still, a humongous thanks to you so much once again, and helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope that it was an interesting rabbit hole. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, real quick, the poll question currently says, will GTA 6 release before World War III? 65% said no, and 34% said yes. So, honestly, I'll say this. Like, however good GTA 6 even is, the amount of time it's taken to develop the thing is insane. Like, this has got to be one of the longest developments of a video game I've ever seen in my life. So, that game better be good. Honestly, that's the risk of taking so long to develop a video game like that, is when it finally comes out, if you take too long, the expectations are going to be so high that I have a feeling disappointment is going to be imminent at that point. Like, that's my personal belief. But Enforcer, what do you think?
Man, honestly, I'm going to be straight up with y'all. I have the same thoughts about GTA 6 that I had about Cyberpunk 2077. Cyberpunk 2077 had been in development for over a decade, I believe, when it came out, and it was so buggy and incomplete on release, most people just immediately hated it. And I think that's what's going to happen with GTA 6. I'll be honest with y'all, the reason why this thing is taking so long, if I had to take a shot at it with how video game history has worked, they're working well beyond their means technologically to try and make this thing much like 2077, and as a result of that, it's probably going to end up coming out and it's going to be an unfinished, incomplete, unpolished game when it comes out, and that's immediately going to kill it upon release, like 2077 was. So that's my honest take on it, because usually a video game doesn't take this long to develop, and if they do, they usually come out and they're silly, unfinished, and unpolished even then. So I'm going to be honest with y'all, I really don't have positive views on GTA 6 as an upcoming game. Like, they'll eventually fix everything after release because they'll get enough feedback from the users that are playing it, but by then everyone's going to be sick and tired of it because the bugs are going to make it unplayable. That's just my opinion on it, though. That's what I think is going to happen, but I could be wrong, and hopefully I would be wrong, because everyone on the planet's been waiting for GTA 6 for like a decade and a half now. So with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Duncan VR, all the way from Australia, and he puts in a $23 support. And thank you very much, Duncan, for that support once again. And he said, General Ding Dong called Chairman G. Ping a bad man and got shoved out window. What effect will 155% have on online sellers who import their goods from, oh man, I'm telling you, Baba Moo? Honestly, Duncan, to answer your question seriously there, it'll have the same effect on online sellers based in the United States that it has on brick and mortar sellers. If you're buying your product from China and that 155% tariff's in effect, then according to what I read, it'll apply to it, and that you'll have to pay it if you're in the United States importing it from China. So, yeah, good luck to them. It sounds like that whole business might be going down the tubes. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, tariffs are not going to be that good. Like, I've already said that a lot tonight, and I really can't even say that enough. Tariffs are never a good move. Let me just, you know what, folks? I'm going to do this one just to make it quick and make it easy. Let me go check this. Historically, have tariffs been detrimental to the U.S. economy when implemented? Historically. Let me ask that question, and I generally already know the answer, but let me get it for y'all here. Let's see. Ah, yes, here we are. So let's see. So they did create the economic panic of 1893. The Smoot-Hawley tariffs of 1930 caused significant harm to the United States and prolonged the Great Depression under the Hoover administration. And also, as a result, just to show this to y'all as a clear, hardened fact, when tariffs were dropped in the post-World War II era, that's actually when we saw the largest economic boom in the United States, is when we incentivized trade globally, which helps us to be able to create a lot of money because of our exports and also the imports of goods that we cannot produce that people want to buy. So generally, based off what I'm seeing here, it definitely appears that there is a very large argument to be said that wide sweeping tariffs across the board are detrimental. Tariffs are a
You know,
scalpel.
you know, you know what's wild though is never in I don't think ever in the history of the country have tariffs ever been over 100%. I think back during I think it was like the Civil War era. I think tariffs were about 40 to 50% more that they jacked them up to. And also during Nixon's hikes on imports, I think it was like a 10% surcharge. So they've been like 10, maybe 40, 50%. I don't think they've ever been over 100, and they've definitely never been 100, I don't think. So that the extent of these tariffs today, I think, are unprecedented. If I have my history right.
Yeah, I mean it's absolutely unprecedented. This has never been heard of before. And to tell y'all something else that's a little bit interesting about this, it's never helped anyone. Now, tariffs in limited aspects do help. Like for example, our sugar tariffs help to insulate and protect our sugar industries here in the United States and their ability to make a profit and keep that industry alive. Tariffs against foreign steel help to keep American steel industries alive and operational, the ones that are here. But it doesn't help us when we don't have that industry. That's what a lot of people aren't getting. You're just literally cutting that good out of the market, and there is no alternative. The alternative has to exist. Tariffs are protectionist by design. So if you see that, like, for example, like in Poland, this is a great example. When Ukraine started to import their massive amounts of grain into the Polish market at the beginning of the war in Ukraine, they started to kill Polish farmers that were in the grain industry because they were being undercut and they couldn't sell their goods. So Poland implemented tariffs on Ukrainian grain, specifically one line item, Ukrainian grains. That's it. They didn't implement a 50% tariff against everything coming from Ukraine. It was just on the grains. So that way they could protect their farmers from going bankrupt because no one will buy their grains because it's so expensive compared to the cheap and endless amounts of Ukrainian grain. That's how tariffs work. You don't just sit there and go, you know what, F you, China, 155% tariffs on literally everything. There are some things here in America that we cannot produce right now that we have to get from China. And we're implementing 155% tariffs. People are still going to have to buy that stuff, and we have no alternative to it. So that's the situation that we find ourselves in right now. It's not really a good one. And also on top of that, I will say this. Much like everything, tariffs are not always bad. Tariffs are good, but like I was saying, they have to be surgical in their use. They can only affect one line item at a time, and it has to be something where that industry already exists in America, and we're wanting to protect them from further erosion. And that's going to bring me into a topic that I think is going to be pretty much a nuclear bomb for a particular industry in America, and that's the Argentine beef deal we just made with Argentina. And I see some people talking about that, and I'll tell you all why this is a bad idea. Argentine beef, for one, is generally considered to not be up to health standards in America historically. That's why we generally haven't bought Argentine beef as a concept, not as a particular company in Argentina, but as a concept. That's why we generally don't buy Argentine beef. Also, on top of that, Argentina is a major beef producer. It's one of the big things that they do as a country, and so we are going to flood the U.S. market with boundless amounts of Argentine beef when American beef producers are having a hard time lowering their prices because there was a large bovine flu that just came through and wiped out a large amount of the heifers that we would have for slaughter here in this country. That's why the prices have gone up. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these beef industries, which are already having a hard time because they hardly have a working, I guess you could say, material base to operate off of, and we're going to import a whole bunch of Argentine beef, which is going to undercut them because the Argentine beef is going to be way cheaper. So a lot of people are just going to buy Argentine beef. So then that means nobody's going to buy U.S. beef because economically, Argentine beef is going to be the only answer. It's the cheapest one. Everyone's going to go for the cheapest option. That's how consumers work. It's statistically proven as fact through multiple studies. So a lot of these American beef manufacturers and cattle ranchers are not even going to have a business anymore, and they're going to go under. So we're literally killing off the whole cattle industry in America, the beef and cattle industry for the large part, so that way we can import this Argentine beef. Now, that is something that actually will hurt the U.S. economy. If we had any sense, we would completely cancel that deal. And as a matter of fact, we would, if Argentine beef started to flood in naturally, we would tariff that to protect the U.S. cattle producers, because it's an existing industry that we are trying to protect so that there isn't greater fallout through the U.S. economy. Even if the beef is expensive, we do not want to destroy the U.S. beef industry just because. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, do you know what Vladimir Putin and Argentinian beef has in common?
What?
They're both familiar with foot and mouth disease.
Man, honestly, man, I tell
you, foot and mouth disease. I'll tell you what, Putin is definitely very familiar with that one.
David K said, "No offense, but the U.S. is widely considered to be one of the worst beef standards in the world." That might be a point, but Argentine beef actually created a cholera epidemic in Britain in the 70s. So I don't really think that there's a good argument to say that their beef is any better than ours, because because Argentine beef was practically banned around the world after what happened in Britain, because just for a little while in this one store in Britain, the Argentine beef was left out unrefrigerated for like a couple of hours. And it ended up poisoning hundreds of people because because the water that the cattle were drinking out of came from a stream that every cow in the country was shitting into. So they were drinking the water and they were getting cholera in their system. So when they were slaughtered, the cholera was already in them and everything else. And then that was being imported to Britain, and people were eating it. And as long as it was refrigerated and didn't stay out of a refrigerator for a couple of hours, it's fine. But once it was out of the refrigerator for literally just a few hours, it ended up poisoning hundreds of people. On top of that,
but it could be a one-off thing. Like not all Argentinian beef is bad, by the way, because I was doing some quick looking into it. Argentina has good beef. They have good beef down there, but the problem is, though, in order to import it into the United States, it has to meet USDA standards. So before it comes to the United States, it's going to have to pass those regulation tests. So if it gets here, it will pass the regulations or it won't be imported. That's the bottom line with that. But if you buy it from Argentina and you don't actually have it imported to the United States, then they have a whole different standard of grading their beef than we have.
Yeah, and also I see a lot of people say U.S. beef is considered very high quality. Yeah, that's something that I was like, that's not even true. U.S. beef is usually high quality, usually around the world. Like hell, back in the day, we were known as the steak and potatoes country because we were one of the few countries that actually had high quality beef, or any beef for that matter. But still, beyond that, even if Argentine beef is good, should we destroy the entire U.S. cattle industry for that? No, that doesn't make any sense at all. Now we're working against American interests. Now we're working against U.S. industry, so that way we can, I don't know, just to have like a little political win in Argentina and go, oh look, he's still there. The economy hasn't collapsed and we're buying the beef, but we completely destroyed every U.S. farmer in the process that was involved in the cattle industry. That's not really a good move, in my opinion.
Yeah, maybe not, I would say.
Yeah, so with that, I hope that does address that well, at least the best we can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our next one here. This one goes to Robert Krogan, and he puts in a $10 support. And thank you very much, Robert. He said, maybe tomahawks now? And also, I know you're moving soon. Not much, but here you go.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support. And every bit's a huge amount to us. So I got to thank you massively for the support. And I also got to say, what was the first part of that question, Matthew?
Maybe they'll get tomahawks now?
I would hope that they would get tomahawks soon, but you never know. Like, I unfortunately have to say, you never know. But still, a huge thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Now, real quick, I just want to make this a quick statement. I don't want to go too deep into it, but the Japanese beef, the Wagyu, the Wagyu. Have you seen A5 Wagyu? Have you seen that, by the way? Have you seen A5 Wagyu, like a picture of it, by the way?
Oh yeah, like the marbling and everything that's present within it. Yeah, it's a fatty steak, really.
Look at that. That right there. I've never had this. It looks really good. Like I'm not sure if I would actually like this or not, because usually I like a lean cut of meat, like steak. But this, it looks appealing visually. Also, I see Danny B, who is a chef. He said the most expensive beef is Wagyu. It's more for steak value. Honestly, I would like to try it. This is way too expensive though. Like I think that's an 8 ounce right there. I just said 110 on it right there. I'm not sure if that's current or not, but I've heard this is very expensive steak right here. So I don't think I'd ever pay that much for a piece of steak, but it looks interesting at least.
I'll be honest with you, I don't really know if I'd like it. It just looks really fatty. Like, like the marbling up from the fat. That's a lot of fat in this thing.
That's a lot, but that's like the way they treat these cows. Like I've seen like the way they're like treating these cows as they like before they slaughter the cows. They like treat these cows like royalty in Japan. Like they give them everything they want basically and feed them the top notch like cow feed and stuff like that. I think some of them even get to listen to TV and stuff like that. Like it's really wild like how the Japanese treat the cattle.
Yeah, I'm not going to diss on this thing entirely until I have one day and, I see if I like it or not. But I'll be honest with y'all, usually, like, fat on a steak is good, but at the same time, having too much fat can be a bad thing. And this thing, it has a lot of fat in it, so I don't know if it's good or not. And generally, I kind of lean towards, from my personal experience with fatty steaks, probably not the greatest, but, I don't know. I'd have to see. Anyways. With that, I hope that does address that best I can in my American opinion. Yeah! But with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Scott Kemp, who puts in a 10. And Scott said, you guys might consider getting a 5G gateway to take with you for the instant internet connection. No charge for the unit. And $55 a month for service. No planning. Canceled any time. Honestly, Scott, we actually had that when we first moved into our current Enforcer HQ 2.0. We did not have internet for a while, and we used that as a stopgap solution so that way we could stream. So that is a good thing. I can attest to it, that 5G gateway you're talking about there. But we didn't use it permanently, though, because it didn't have the constant like connectivity we were looking for. So we went with the actual fiber, which obviously fiber, in my opinion, at least in my personal opinion, fiber is better. But good idea, though. And Enforcer, what say you?
I thank you for support and sharing a great idea with us, actually. I'll look into that. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to FL Camera, who put in a 10 and said, hope you guys have a safe trip and an easy move, and here's a couple bucks toward the supplies.
Hey, thank you so much for the support, and thank you for helping us with the moving fund. We will be moving here soon, and I got to thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Melody Myers, who puts in a 10 and does not leave a comment. But thank you very much, Melody, as well, for helping to keep the channel running. And Enforcer, what say you?
And thank you so much for the massive support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. And we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Putin Puppet, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Putin Puppet, for that $10 support. And they said, the U.S. won't ever send one Tomahawk being aligned under Putin. And this game will go on and on and on. And this is useless. Honestly, I don't necessarily agree with that. Like there's some extent, like no matter if the U.S. leadership wants to do it or not, sometimes your enemy backs you into a corner. And when Putin is doing certain things like he's done now, which he's honestly made the U.S. administration look like an ass. And I'm not saying that to criticize. That's just what Putin did. That's what he did. He punked the U.S. for the third time in a row. So at some point, the U.S. leadership has to save face because they also have to worry about public opinion in the United States, or otherwise that could hurt their re-election chances and also their party. So at some point, they got to take a stand on it. So I think eventually they'll send the Tomahawks, but just not immediately. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say I think they're eventually going to send the Tomahawks, but this administration moves like a snail in foreign policy, so it might be some time. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. A big thanks to you once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from John Bernard, and he said, no questions, save it for the super chats, and appreciate you both for keeping us informed.
Hey, and thank you so much for the kind words and the support and helping this channel to keep running. And so a big thanks to you once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Samuel Sizamanski. And Samuel said, sorry I missed the shows over the weekend, and I went to Cincinnati to visit a friend and see the city. And can y'all take a live chat and long live the LSA?
Hey, thank you so much for supporting. You went to Cincinnati. I've never been to Cincinnati myself. And I wonder what Cincinnati is like because I always heard Cincinnati this, Cincinnati that. I don't know anything about the city, really. It looks interesting though. And I like that bridge. That is one hell of a nice looking bridge. But we will make sure to take a live chat in your honor. And so Matthew, what do we got?
And the live chat question goes to Tiger. And he said, did they fully restore the power to that Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant in the Ukraine area? Is it finished?
We haven't gotten the conclusion of that story, but we're thinking that it may have been finished. But unfortunately, we don't have any proof to confirm that yet. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. A big thanks to you once again for sponsoring the live chat, and we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 9 from Ben Welke. And thank you very much, Ben, as well. He said, just jumped from my mechanical engineering degree to law school, and I love it. And must be because it's slightly less stressful, LSA. Honestly, I can't tell if you're joking or not, to be honest with you, Ben. Typically, law school is considered one of the most stressful post-college things you can possibly do. Law school is designed to be stressful, actually, on purpose. They say it's to build your stamina in public speaking and things like that. But honestly, I find it to be a pressure cooker that honestly drives the students to be insane, basically. Law school is not a good environment for your mental health, in my personal opinion. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta say, very interesting thing to hear. I just generally didn't like law school, but great to hear that you found your niche. And so a big thanks to you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Dapper Dragon. And Dapper said, can finally put some support in. And I think this war hasn't ended because Zelensky forgot to activate the Putin boss battle over the volcano.
maybe that's possible. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from, this is not a curse word, by the way, this is the guy's name, Da Flux, who puts in a 5. And that was a close one. But he said, a long-time lurker, first-time super chat, we in Belgium had the first 4 of 45 F-35 delivered and proud of it. And keep up the good work and LSA.
Hey, and great to hear that you got your F-35s, so at least the first batch of them. And I gotta say, a big thanks to you for the support, Deflux, and helping this channel to keep running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible and keep it running. And I hope you all enjoy those F-35s. Don't use them all in one place, But with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to WS once again, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, WS. They said, furthermore, they said importers, aka my customers, have said they have no option but to pass the cost on to their customers, i.e. consumers, government contractors, taxpayers.
Yeah, that's generally what we've heard from anyone who's involved in actually running a business. And I would agree with that completely. And I don't mean to say anyone who's actually run a business in any sarcastic way. But one thing I have to say, and this is something, I don't mean to be insulting with this, but this is the truth of it, is that everyone who runs a business says that, which is the truth. And then everyone who doesn't run a business just says, well, buy American, like it's that easy, and they don't know that you just can. That's something that's a little bit, I gotta be honest, it's a little bit annoying to me how people watch TikToks these days and they get these stupid explanations which explain nothing, and then they think they know the world, like they can just say a little slogan just buy American. That's as stupid as the Soviet Union just saying just build it like they used to back in Magnitogorsk and stuff. It's like that doesn't work. It's like a cool slogan, really neat. How in the world does that actually help? And I just got to say that's one thing that does annoy me a little bit, is that usually people who say the whole deal of, oh, that doesn't hurt and it's super easy, they don't even run a business. They're talking from no experience on how in the world the logistics of that even work. So I do thank you for the support and agreeing with what we're saying, because it's not opinion, it's fact. I don't even know how in the world this is being considered like an opinion by some people. This is literally the fact of what's going to happen. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, now the next one here is going to go to none other than, guess who it's going to go to? And obviously you aren't going to guess because I don't know, but I'm trying to stall here to get down to the bottom of the spreadsheet. But this one goes to Andrew Honeycutt, who puts in a 5. And he said, how many Americans were thinking, gee, I need another ballroom that I'll never see? Or, gee, I'd like to pay less for groceries. Who benefits? I will say this. I can't get too deep into that one, Andrew, because that one does get political. But I believe, and once again, I think that the ballroom thing is being funded by private funding, I think, by the U.S. president. I'm not sure, though. I don't know. Like there's been, I don't know. But Enforcer, what say you?
I really don't know on that either. But one thing I will say though is why do we need the victory arch? Why is that a thing that we need, like right now of all times? Like, I'm not against building monuments, but I think most, if not all, of the monuments that exist in Washington, D.C., like the Lincoln Memorial and the Washington Monument, were generally built outside of the government, or at least were started outside of the government with really no funding from them. And then I think at some point the Washington Monument was completed with government funding. And I also think the Lincoln Memorial eventually got some government funding, but I don't think, off of my knowledge, that it started with any. So why in the world are we building the arch? I just don't know. Like the whole thing, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Like how all this is happening in Washington, or at least around Washington. It's like, what about the rest of the country? Like this, like Washington D.C. isn't Moscow or St. Petersburg or London or Paris or anything. It just happens to be the federal administrative center of the country. That's it. It's not like we're trying to go and make this thing into some sort of a vision of grandeur. Our economy and our figures and our military speaks for our grandeur, really, and the country itself does. So I don't really get the whole project side of things with that. Just me personally, I don't get it. And also, when in the hell is the ballroom ever going to be used? It's only going to be used on state visits. So why in the world even demolish the whole East Wing to build a ballroom that will only use maybe like 4 or 3 times a year? And even still, no one's going to go dance in a ballroom. Like that's something you do at like a private club, like, like Mar-a-Lago or something like that. That's not something you do in the White House. You don't just throw a ball and everyone gather around. This isn't Versailles. This is the executive mansion for the entire executive branch. Like that's my 2 cents. I don't really get it. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Jave, I think it's Jave Richmond, and he put us in a 5. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support. He said, if a war was to break out between NATO and Russia, how far do you think the tit for tat goes before it goes nuclear or a ceasefire?
It would probably go for a couple of weeks before we start curb stomping the Russians, and then they'd start nuking us. That's generally how that would go. So I would say about a couple of weeks, and at the best case scenario for the Russians on their end, it'd probably be a couple of months before they have to start tactically nuking our forces on the field. So I hope that does address it the best I can, at least in my opinion. Big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also someone said, this is stimulating to the economy. I think, would you like a stimulus package? Excuse me, stimulus. But anyways, moving on to our next one here. This one goes to WS, who puts in a $5 support. And thank you very much, good sir, as well. They said, Enforcer Matt, I took a break and 30 minutes back. I'm in logistics, and regarding tariffs, 100% true regarding importers paying the customs fees to the U.S. CBP.
Yeah, I thank you once again, WS, for the support and throwing that in. It's fact. Like I don't know if people know this, but college, like if like the people who've been to college, they'll know what I'm talking about. But college is literally guided reading. Like that's all the classes are in college, is usually guided reading, especially in history. So if you can crack open a book and read it and understand what it says, you practically went through a whole college course on your own, especially if it's a book on anything empirical, like how logistics works or the railroads works or anything like that. That is pretty much just a history class. And you're not paying a professor about $1,600 or $2,500 to go through guided reading. And I read plenty of books on how logistics works, especially with shipping containers, which is a huge thing. Pretty much most of our trade with China is done through intermodal trading with shipping containers and container ships. And that is how it works. It's like, that's not something I'm coming up with. That's just how the system works. That's literally how it evolved, especially in the 80s and the 90s when this took off with China and a lot of Southeast Asian countries. That's how it works. And so, it's a crazy thing that some people want to disagree with that, because you're in the logistics system and you know that. That's a fact. Like, it's a hard and fast fact. That is how it works. So a huge thanks to you for backing that up, and with experience as well. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Danny B, who throws in yet another super chat, and he throws in a 20 this time. And thank you very much, Danny, for that support. Once again, he said, Chef Danny again, and I never had Wagyu either, but I've worked with chefs that cooked with it. And I'm sorry about that. He said, me personally, I don't trust someone to make me a $300 steak, and I can't afford to buy for home, because you can't buy just a steak. Honestly, if I was cooking a $300 steak, that steak would go from $300 to about $1 because I would run it and I would probably overcook the hell out of it. It would become rubber. They would have the first ever rubber Wagyu if I cooked it. So don't, yeah, me on a $300 steak, that's a no-go. And honestly, any steak these days is pricey, so I would run any steak. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you so much for the support, Danny B. And honestly, one day I want to try a Wagyu, but a lot of people don't know this either. You can't really get Wagyu beef, real Wagyu, in America because I think there's an importation restriction on it, as in it doesn't meet USDA standards specifically. So Japanese Wagyu, the real Wagyu, can't be imported. So I think we get to the closest thing we can in America, if I remember correctly, which trying to get the marbling of the fat and all that stuff in our cattle, and then we market it as Wagyu. Although really it's more so of a Wagyu imitation. So if you really want Wagyu, you actually have to go to Japan to be able to get it. One day I would like to hope, like, I don't know when, but in the future I would be able to go to Japan and try a Wagyu steak and give like a real input on it. But I'll be honest with y'all folks, like, a lot of people think that we make millions running this show. We don't make that much. That steak at that price bracket is way out of my budget. Like, even if I went to Japan, I'm not going to be able to afford that thing. It's a nice thought, but I don't think I'd ever even be able to be in the price bracket to buy a steak that is that expensive. But still, a humongous thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who helped make this thing possible and help us to keep this thing running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Eric, and Eric puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Eric, for that support. He said, I'll give you a huge discount on your pest control wherever you move to. Hit me up. I have branches all over the U.S. Love the bug billionaire. Oh, damn. How about that? Bug discount right there, pest control. How about that? How about that?
I like that. I like that. And I got to thank you so much for the support and the kind offer. And so with that, a humongous thanks to you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Luke UK. And Luke said, good night, LOC.
Hey, and good night, Luke. And long live the Lee Spring Army. And the Lee Spring Army will never die. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Kyle Padell, and he puts in a 5 as well. And he said, how about an old school LSA hood segment? How about it?
Oh man, a hood review?
I mean, can we get a hood review? I mean, come on, man. I mean, come on, a little bit of Scranton. I mean, a little Scranton or something. Give me a little something hood.
Well, Lord, Jack, you just keep hitting that, but endlessly here, and I'll keep this thing going. You gotta know about a man on the moon, or if a boy can walk, or we gotta talk about that polio. I mean polo. Anyway, you gotta bounce the ball around. You gotta knock the ball from place to place. You gotta do the thing. Let's look at Scranton. While I drop this pen here and fling it around my desk, let's look at Scranton. I'm holding a pen, I'm swinging it in my hand, and back and forth like Corn Pop, which is a bad dude who ran a bunch of bad boys.
Do you wanna learn about that man on the moon? I mean, come on, man. I mean, man on the moon, or if your kids want to know about those aliens. Anyway, Xi Jinping. Anyway.
Let's look at Scranton, where I grew up. I grew up here, or at least it kind of did. Oh my God. Wow, they got an old caddy out here. Corn Pop had a caddy. He had a real bad caddy. Old buddy. He used to carry him around. He helped him with the golf clubs or golf balls. Speaking of balls, but Scranton's kind of looking a little working class, where I grew up. I grew up in a middle class families.
Where was he actually from, by the way? Was he actually from Scranton, or was he from, I don't even know where the other place was. Where was he actually from?
Where is he from? Where is he from? Where did he go? Where did he come from? Cotton Eye Joe. Where was he born? Scranton. He was born in Scranton.
Oh, he actually was born in Scranton.
What is his early life about? He was born in Scranton, and, let's see. He was wealthy, purchased a home in Garden City in New York.
Father.
That was his father. The president was only, the former president, anyway, he was only 4 years old at the time. He moved in, and then he moved to Claymont in Delaware, and then Mayfield in Delaware. Isn't that like a laundry machine? Maytag, that's what I'm talking, Maytag laundry. But beyond
Isn't that where Barney Fife used to be the police officer? Was Mayfield?
That was Mayberry.
Oh, Mayberry. Yeah, that's right,
yeah.
Mayberry.
So Garden City where the hell's Garden City even? So he's born here, and then he kind of like moved out, I guess, at around 4. Let's see. Oh, wait, no. They moved back to Scranton after a couple of years, so they weren't even in Garden City for a while. So then he lived in Claymont, and he lived in an apartment in Claymont, and then he moved to a house in Mayfield, Delaware. So kind of all in the same place. But apparently he was generally from Scranton in his earlier years growing up, and then he lived the rest of his life growing up in Delaware. But where the hell is Claymont and Mayfield? Let's go look at that. Claymont and then Mayfield. So this is on the Delaware River. Wow, that's like right south of Philadelphia. Didn't know that. And then let's see. Mayfield. Where's Mayfield? Let's see here. Look, you gotta find Mayfield. You gotta find Mayfield here. Delaware. It doesn't exist. It actually does. So then they moved in the same spot, apparently, because Mayfield's up in here. So they literally just moved like a couple of miles away. So where the hell is this? Because apparently, like, after he was 10, he was like growing up in here somewhere. So let's take a look at what this place looks like. This looks like Alabama. This looks just like Birmingham in some parts. It's what you do. That sidewalk, it's covered in black tar. Speaking of black tar, like it's you know what I mean. Anyway, you travel around, you look at the streets, and you find out what it's about. I gotta tell. Look. You sat there and you thought I grew up in Scranton, didn't you? Well, I actually grew up south of Philadelphia. That was a real rough place. That's where corn pop's from. No wonder it's called corn pop. The corn's popping up in Philadelphia.
Was that where Corn Pop was out there banging around the straight razors on the street and, putting them in rain barrels and letting them rust and stuff like that?
I guess because he was a teen at that time. Remember, he said he was a lifeguard at like a public pool or something like that. And that was where the corn pop dude was hanging out. So I guess this was around here.
I'll be honest, this place here, like, is still nicer than where we grew up. So
yeah,
I mean, I don't really see this place as somewhere where kids will be banging straight razors on the side of the street. I mean, hell, they didn't even bang straight razors on the side of the street, even where we grew up, which was not as nice as where he grew up. So, I mean, they were banging a lot more stuff in the straight razors where we were from, a lot more than that.
Let's take a look at it in the 1960s. What did it look like back then? Was it different, or has it been like yuppified? Because it is like 1960 to now. That's a long period of time. That's like 60 something years. So it could have been different back then. But I got to be honest with you, folks. Politicians have a way of embellishing things where everyone grew up in a middle class family that was just getting by, and they had their own struggles and stuff. Everyone has that story, so you can't even believe it. Like, some people have a really tough upbringing. They only get a small loan of $1 million like everyone else does. But I'll be honest with y'all. I just they don't have any pictures of this place from the 60s. What the hell did they even look like back then?
I remember when I was young, they gave me a small loan of $5 to go down to Costco and get that chicken. It saved my life.
That chicken was gritty. that chicken was hitting the gritty. But beyond that, apparently it was a steel making city back then because it says steel making in Claymont. So I'm guessing there was a steel mill here. Maybe we can find the footprint of that, because if there was a steel mill here, it would have been. Yeah, here it is. This is where it used to be. At least you can tell. So apparently at some point this was a steel making city back in the day, in the 60s. So that's apparently when he grew up around it. I mean, that wouldn't have been too bad. Like, that's not the worst thing that you could be around as a steel mill, especially back then. That's where a good paying job was at. But I don't know, but apparently that's where he's from. He's from Scranton, but he kind of moved into this area, like right pretty much in Philadelphia, almost in Delaware. So interesting. Didn't know that. That's news to me.
If you grew up today, you'd be talking about you put that on a Klarna payment plan and got that $5 chicken, put it on payment schedule and stuff. A little dollar here, a little dollar there. Anyway.
Look, I got to be honest with you. Every politician, they grow up in a middle-class family, and then for some reason they go to Harvard or Yale or Wharton, the Wharton School of Business, and they get connected, and they make a lot of money, and for some reason they're always in the right place at the right time. It's always weird. How come no one else gets that chance? You know what I mean? It's a little bit suspicious. Really suspicious. I don't know, but I always find it interesting, folks. You know how they all have like middle class upbringings. I just want to point this out to y'all, because this is something you can see across the board. Everyone always has this quote unquote middle class upbringing that they all speak so highly of, and then for some reason they always go to some Ivy League university. Like anyone with a middle class upbringing just goes to Yale or Harvard or something. Don't you all find that a little weird? Don't you find that a little weird? Considering that most of the time the people who go to Harvard and Yale, they're usually connected in a higher class family, or they're at least in a family with a lot of connections. And for some reason, every single politician these days, they always just happen to, do nothing, and then they go to an Ivy League university, and then after that, they're set. Isn't that a little bit weird? Isn't that just a little odd? Like, don't some people agree with me on that that's just kind of the weirdest thing to happen? But anyways, because, just to point this out, you don't really hear of a lot of people in the political scene that happen to go to, like, Alabama or AUM or UAB or anything like that, here in Alabama. Any university that's on that level, that would be, well, Alabama's kind of heard of because their football team, but UAB or AUM or it's just some normal college that you don't really hear of in the country because there's a dime a dozen of them. You don't really hear about a lot of those people in politics. You always hear people who went to Ivy League universities that don't even have any sense. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Plazoth, who puts in a 3. Also, big shout out to you, Plazoth, for that $3 support, by the way. Always throwing in that very consistent support right there. And we also have a 2 from Dupper Bob, as well as a 1 from Marc-Andre Brunette, and a 1 from Eric as well. And thank you very much to Plazoth, Dupper Bob, Marc-Andre Brunette, and Eric for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank y'all massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Y'all didn't throw in comments, but we are massively appreciative of that. And I got to say a big thanks to you once again for enjoying this channel and helping it to keep running, because all of y'all helped to make the dream work. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 2 from Sundown64. He said, SLC, what's that? And that's Salt Lake City, right, by the way.
Look, you gotta know your abbreviations. LAX is Los Angeles. SLC, Salt Lima beans. You gotta talk about those Lima beans in the grocery store, stacking shelves. Look, you wanted some voices in your questions. Well, you got one now. You happy now, Jack? Well, anyway, you gotta be happy with what you do. Salt Lake City, it's where it's at. But it's SLC stands for Salt Lake City, beyond the voice. But still, a big thanks to you once again for support, and we are on to the next one.
And with that, folks, it is now time to jump into our live chat questions proper and our Morse code decoders of the stream. And tonight, we got Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Mason Miami, Joni Dog, Norm Pritchett, Arabelle Garbo, Royal Fluffiness, as well as Kush, Cubioteric Sire, and Brian Blairstown. They said Morse decode for the day. It says, if you're a Russian, do you always have to lie, or is that a conscious choice that is made? LLT, LSA.
And that is the sound of money. Y'all hit that John the jackpot. That is the Morse convention tonight. I'm actually doing that stutter thing for the voice, and now it's almost carrying over into my normal speaking. But beyond that, y'all did get that correct. I got to congratulate y'all massively for getting that correct. A truly amazing thing. And I got to say, the Least Spring Armory Signal Corps always knows what they're doing. It's truly incredible. And so with that, folks, it's time for us to move on into the question segments, for the live chats at least. Unfortunately, folks, I do have bad news. Due to time constraints, considering that we're going overtime right now, we will only be able to get 3 live chat questions. That is almost a norm in the channel from a day-to-day at this point, but I gotta thank everyone who is supporting the channel massively. Back in the day, we used to not get a massive amount of super chats, and we usually were able to knock them out quickly enough that we could get to a decent amount of live chats. Nowadays, so many people enjoy the channel and want to support it, it's really hard to get live chats. I gotta say, it's a problem that we're blessed to have, but I have to say I'm so sorry to everyone who did throw in a live chat, because unfortunately we only get a limited number of them every night. But still, we are going to make sure to get our 3 live chats of the night. And so we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one right here is going to go to Trent, who said, did you guys see about the Russian saboteurs that just got caught in Poland today?
Yes, we did. We actually covered that spy ring that got busted, and that the Polish government apparently arrested a large number of them. And so I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Flamehawk, who said, could it be that the balloons are trying to get to become the new normal that Belarus or whoever is sending across the border, and eventually they might attach weapons to it and then send it across the border after people are used to it?
Oh yeah, you're definitely on a good track of thinking, because that's what we're actually that's what we've actually said here on the channel over the past several weeks, is that they could be some sort of a prelude to conducting an armed attack and just getting people familiar to the site and the obstruction. And when it becomes an armed attack, we're completely taken off guard because we've gotten used to it as a fact of life. So I would have to say yes, that is a serious concern, and one that we've brought up on the channel as well. So you and us, we're in the same boat, actually. And so a big thanks to you once again for a great question. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was like the last person who covered the lucky last question of the night?
And that that viewer is going to be AF Kaplan, who said, "Are there any other countries in Europe that could send to Ukraine a Taurus or Tomahawk equivalent? For example, Sweden."
Unfortunately, I don't know of any missile systems that in depth that I could speak about that are inside of Europe that could be provided outside of the Storm Shadow Scalp EG or the Taurus or the Tomahawk. So unfortunately, I would have to declare ignorance on that one. I'm not going to do the log voice again, because honestly, I think that is actually going to start making me stutter if I do that way too much. But still, a big thanks to everyone so much once again for watching tonight, and also a big shout out to Backyard Brawl Brothers, who threw in a 2 and said, hope you're feeling better, Enforcer Andrew. And thank you so much for the kind words. I actually am feeling a lot better, and hopefully everything will be solved with that soon. But still, a big thanks to you so much once again for support. And with that, folks, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank all of y'all massively on behalf of both of us for enjoying this stream tonight. We had 96,000 people watch the stream before it ended, and most importantly, we had 16.3 thousand people here at the peak tonight. That is a lot of people, and that is a lot of folks who count on the Enforcer for the news, and we greatly appreciate all of y'all for y'all's time and spending that here on the channel, because we know that y'all have a lot of other things that y'all could be doing or could be watching right now at this point in the night, yet y'all choose to be here watching this show. We're massively appreciative of that, and we thank y'all incredibly for still enjoying this channel years down the road and still coming here for your nightly news. And so with that, another big shout out to Crispy, who threw in a 5 as well. And with that, folks, we will see you all tomorrow to cover the next 24 hours of news from around the world. And if there is a short war video, one of us will be making that video tomorrow. I'm not sure who. It's supposed to be me, but I might be away, and Matthew might have to make it if there is enough news to cover it. So we'll have to see. But with that, we will see you all tomorrow, either in the short war video or in the nightly news at 10 p.m. Eastern time. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe. Slava Ukraini, Haram Slava, long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, we will see you all tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern on our next nightly War News stream, and also midday tomorrow as well, if there is enough news to cover midday, that is, for the short war video. And we will be figuring out who is going to make that video. We will go to Brawlhalla to figure out who's going to make that video. But also, by the way, it's a scheduling thing, so we'll have to wait and see how that works with the schedule tomorrow. But one of us will be making it if there is enough news to cover. And with that, folks, thank you all for joining us once again tonight. And to all 100,000 people that were here by the end of the stream, we appreciate every single one of you very much, and we will see you all tomorrow. But with that, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, get some rest, and good night.